Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. My daughter's been drawing the same thing for 3 years. My daughter Iris is 8 years old, and she draws every single day. Not unusual for a kid, right? Most children go through phases. Dinosaurs, princesses, horses with impossible proportions. Iris went through those phases too. Before, 3 years ago, when she was 5, she started drawing something new. At first, I thought it was cute. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her crayons and sketch these simple figures. A big one and a small one, holding hands. The big one always wore a red dress. The small one was always smiling. "That's beautiful, sweetie." I'd say, "Is that you and Mommy?" She'd shake her head. "That's the lady and the girl." "What lady?" "The one who comes to my room." I laughed it off. Imaginary friends are normal. Healthy even. My wife Emma and I joked about it that night after Iris went to bed. We clinked our wine glasses together and I said something stupid like, "At least she's creative." But Iris kept drawing them. Every single day. The same two figures, holding hands. Sometimes they stood in front of a house. Sometimes in a field. Sometimes in darkness with tiny white dots she said were stars. But always the same. The woman in the red dress and the small, smiling child. After a few months, I started to notice details. The woman's dress had buttons now, 7 of them. The child's smile had gotten wider, showing teeth. Iris's artistic skills were improving, but the subject never changed. "Honey, why don't you draw something else?" Emma suggested one afternoon. "How about a puppy? You love puppies." "I can't," Iris said, not looking up from her paper. "She wants me to draw her." "The lady wants you too?" "She says I need to remember. So she visits me and I draw." Emma and I exchanged a glance. That night we talked about it more seriously. Maybe Iris was having trouble adjusting to her new school. Maybe she was stressed. We decided to give it more time. The drawings continued, month after month. Iris turned 6, and she still drew the woman and the child every day. The images became more detailed, more refined. The woman's face developed features. Curly dark hair, a thin nose, sad eyes that Iris somehow captured with just a crayon. I should mention something I haven't said yet. Emma and I had another daughter before Iris. Her name was Lily. She died when she was 4, 2 years before Iris was born. It was sudden, an aneurysm. One moment she was laughing at breakfast. The next she was gone. We don't talk about her much. It's too hard. Her room is still exactly as she left it, at the end of the hall. We keep the door closed. When Iris was 7, I noticed something in one of her drawings that made my stomach drop. The child in the picture was wearing a specific shirt, yellow with a cartoon beyond it. I recognized it immediately because I'd bought it for Lily. It was her favorite shirt. She was wearing it the morning she died. I never mentioned that shirt to Iris. We put all of Lily's clothes in boxes in the attic before Iris was born. There was no way she could have known about it. "Where did you see that shirt?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The girl wears it," Iris said simply. "She likes bees." My hand started shaking. "What's the girl's name?" Iris looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "She doesn't tell me. The lady calls her my little flower." That was Emma's nickname for Lily. My little flower. I went to Emma's office and closed the door. I asked her if she'd shown Iris any pictures of Lily, if she'd mentioned the shirt, if she called Iris my little flower, maybe without thinking. Emma started crying. She hadn't. We'd agreed not to burden Iris with the weight of the sister she'd never known. Not yet. Maybe when she was older. That night after Iris fell asleep, Emma and I went through the boxes in the attic. We found the beast's shirt. We also found photos we hadn't looked at in years. In one of them, I was wearing a red dress. It was from a company Christmas party. About 6 months before Lily died, Emma had convinced me to dress up as Mrs. Claus as a joke. I'm smiling in the photo. Lily is on my hip, laughing. I was the woman in the red dress. The next morning I asked Iris to describe the lady. She put down her orange crayon and thought about it. She's pretty, Iris said. She has a nice voice. She's sad sometimes. What does she tell you? She says she misses someone. She says she comes to visit because she doesn't want to forget her little flower. She says if she forgets, it's like she never existed at all. I couldn't breathe. Emma, standing in the doorway, let out a sound I'd never heard her make before. She says she's scared. Iris continued, coloring in the red dress. She says one day she won't remember what the laughing sounds like anymore, or what the little hands felt like, or the way she smelled like strawberry shampoo. Lily's shampoo, the one we bought because she insisted on it, even though it cost twice as much. Iris, I whispered, when does she visit you? At night, mostly. Sometimes I wake up and she's sitting on my bed, holding the girl's hand. She looks at me and cries. Then they walk down the hall together. Down the hall? Where do they go? To the room with the closed door. Lily's room. I don't know how long Emma and I stood there. Time felt strange. Iris kept drawing, her hand moving in practice motions. The woman and the child, always together, never separate. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked down the hall. I stood outside Lily's closed door, my hand on the doorknob. From inside, I heard something. Soft singing. A lullaby I used to sing when Lily couldn't sleep. I opened the door. The room was exactly as we left it. The small bed with its purple comforter. The stuffed animals lined up on the shelf. The nightlight that cast stars on the ceiling. And sitting on the bed, barely visible in the dim light, I saw something. Not a person exactly. More like the memory of a person. The shape of someone who used to exist, refusing to disappear completely. She looked up at me with my own face, but it was wrong somehow. Older, more tired, eaten away by something I couldn't name. Beside her sat the shadow of a little girl in a beast shirt. I don't want to forget her, the shadow said in my voice. I can't forget her. I haven't, I said. We haven't forgotten her. Yes, you have. You closed this door. You packed her away. You had another daughter and pretended this one never existed. You smile now. You laugh. You've moved on. That's not fair. We grieve every single day. Do you? The shadow stood up, the child's hand in hers. When was the last time you said her name out loud? When was the last time you told Iris about her sister? When was the last time you let yourself remember what she smelled like? I realized I couldn't answer. I couldn't remember the last time. It had been months, maybe a year. We'd gotten so good at not talking about it, at protecting ourselves from the pain, that we'd let her slip away in the silence. Iris sees us because she doesn't know not to, the shadow continued. She doesn't know that dead daughters are supposed to stay buried. So we visit her and she draws us. She helps us remember. What are you? I asked. The shadow smiled sadly. I'm every version of you that can't let go. Every moment you've suppressed. Every memory you've locked away. Every word you swallowed instead of saying her name. I'm what happens when love has nowhere to go. The shadow and the child walked toward me. As they got closer, I could see more details. The child's smile, the woman's tears. They looked so tired, so desperately tired. Help me, the shadow whispered. I can't carry her alone anymore. Then they walked through me and I felt it. 3 years of grief I'd pushed down. 3 years of memories I'd avoided. The sound of Lily's laugh, the weight of her in my arms, the way she said "Mama" when she was scared, the strawberry smell of her hair, the breakfast table, the sudden seizure, the ambulance, the hospital, the doctor's face. The funeral, the empty room, the closed door, the silence, the terrible endless silence. I collapsed in the hallway. Emma found me there, sobbing. I told her everything. The next morning we sat down with Iris. We showed her pictures of Lily. We told her about her sister. We said her name out loud, over and over, until it stopped feeling like a curse. We opened Lily's door. We sat in her room together as a family. We cried. We laughed about funny things Lily used to do. We remembered. Iris listened carefully. Then she said, "The lady will be happy you're helping now." That night, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went into Lily's room before bed. I sat on her little bed. I held her favorite stuffed rabbit, and I talked to her. I told her about my day, about Iris's drawings, about how much I missed her, about how I was sorry for closing the door. I fell asleep there. When I woke up in the morning, there was a new drawing on the nightstand. I didn't remember Iris coming in, but it was clearly her work. It showed the woman in the red dress and the small child. But this time, there was a third figure. Another woman, kneeling down, arms open. The two figures were walking toward her. Underneath, in Iris's careful handwriting, it said, "The lady says thank you. She can rest now." Iris doesn't draw the woman and the child anymore. She's back to dinosaurs and princesses and horses with impossible legs. Emma and I keep Lily's door open. We say her name. We remember. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that lullaby, soft and distant, like an echo of something that used to be, and I wonder if the shadow was ever really gone, or she's just quiet now, satisfied that someone is still carrying her little flower forward into a future she never got to see. I wonder if that's what ghosts really are. Not the dead haunting the living, but the living haunting themselves. The love that has nowhere to go, taking shape in the empty spaces of a closed room, a packed box, a name we're afraid to say. Iris starts 3rd grade next week. She's excited. She picked out a new backpack, yellow with bees on it. I didn't have the heart to tell her no. Story 2. I found a hard drive with an interesting file on it. I bought an old hard drive and found a file called second_txt. I wasn't looking for anything creepy. I just wanted a cheap external drive for video backups. The pawn shop down the street had a few, still sealed in static bags. The clerk said they came from an estate sale, a computer lab that shut down years ago. When I got home and plugged one in, there was only a single file on it. File name, second_u.txt, date modified, November 7, 2024, 3:47 a.m. size, 13 kilobyte integrity warning. Check some mismatch. This is what was on the file, down arrow. It started about 3 months ago. The dreams, not nightmares, not at first. When I closed my eyes, I woke up in another life, a small, old apartment with creaky floors and a constant hum of traffic outside. The curtains were yellowed, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and rain. I lived as someone else. I worked at a coffee shop. I had friends that I recognized, but didn't know. I even had a scar on my arm that didn't exist when I woke up. The strange part wasn't the realism. It was the continuity. Every night, I picked up right where I'd left off. The same world, the same people, even days passing by. I started keeping track. I began writing down details, places, names, all of which matched each other, night after night. It wasn't a dream. It was another life. At first, it was almost comforting. I preferred that world. The colors felt softer there. My other self, I'll call her Victoria, was calmer, even happier. One night, I felt her hesitate. She was washing dishes, staring out the window at a dark street, when she whispered, "I dream about you too." I remember freezing because, in that instant, it wasn't me thinking it. It was her. From then on, it got worse. She started leaving notes for me, scrawled in her world's handwriting, appearing on my nightstand when I woke up. They said things like, "We shouldn't both exist. If I wake up as you, you'll disappear. I stopped sleeping. I tried staying awake for days, but exhaustion always won. Every time I drifted off, she seemed closer. Her world is darker. My reflection there lingered too long, as if testing the boundaries between us. Then one night, I woke up and the air smelled like dust and rain. The floorboards creaked. The curtains were yellowed. I was Victoria. I panicked. I tried everything, pinching, running outside, screaming. No one noticed anything strange. It wasn't a dream anymore. I had switched. I searched desperately for a way back. I tried sleep meditation, inflicted pain onto myself. Nothing worked. Until one night, I felt exhaustion pull at me again, and I thought, maybe I'll wake up in my home. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in my own bed again. Relief washed through me. My room, my world, my handwriting on the notes. Only, the handwriting was slightly different, a little neater. And when I walked to the mirror, the reflection smiled first and said, I told you, only one of us gets to wake up. For days, I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare. Everything felt wrong. Not drastically, just enough to unsettle me. The sunlight in my apartment came in from the wrong angle. My phone's wallpaper had changed. The coffee mug I always used, the one with a chip on the rim, it was perfectly smooth. Little things. But they piled up like whispers. I started testing myself. I'd write down small facts, my birthday, my address, the name of my first pet, and then check them later. Sometimes the writing wasn't mine. Sometimes the answers were close, but not right. I wasn't sure if I was forgetting or if I was remembering someone else's life. The reflection was always there. At first, it just watched. Subtle things, like blinking half a second too late. But then it began moving differently. I'd raise my hand, and it would raise the wrong one. I'd tilt my head, and it would move ever so slightly. Every night, right before bed, I'd hear it whisper through the dark glass. You're in the wrong place. I stopped looking at mirrors. I covered them with blankets, avoided windows, even put tape on my phone camera. But reflections don't need glass. They show up wherever light bends, in the corner of a spoon, in the shimmer of a puddle, in a computer screen that's just gone black. The last straw was my voicemail. I never use it, but one morning, there were 7 missed calls, all from my own number. When I played the first message, I heard heavy breathing. Then, in a trembling voice, I hear myself. She's not asleep anymore. She's in your world now. Every message after that was the same voice. The same me, pleading, whispering, begging for help. The final voicemail didn't even contain words, just laughter. Slow and careful, like it was practicing. That night, I dreamed again. I was standing in the yellow curtain apartment. Only this time, she was there. Victoria. She looked exactly like me, except for the smile. She said, I like your world better. I think I'll keep this one. I tried to wake up, but the air there felt thicker. She stepped closer, touching my face, and for a moment, I could feel her fingers in both worlds. Cold, shaky, too real. When I finally woke up, the blanket over my mirror was gone, and written across the glass in fog breath were 4 words. You're still dreaming, Victoria. I haven't slept in days. Or maybe I've been sleeping this entire time. It's hard to tell anymore. The boundaries between waking and dreaming have dissolved, like paint running together in rainwater. Every time I blink, something changes. The hallway lengthens. The air hums faintly, like a refrigerator running somewhere just out of sight. Sometimes my apartment looks exactly as I remember, then times where the walls seem to breathe. I've started leaving notes for myself again, the way she used to. The handwriting shifts slightly each time, and sometimes the ink smudges into letters I didn't write. Stop moving. She's almost here. You're writing these. My reflection, if that's what it still is, doesn't wait anymore. When I pass a dark surface, it doesn't copy me. It observes. Its eyes move first, as if anticipating what I'll do. It's always smiling, always patient. I caught it standing still once while I moved. For a moment, I thought it was gone, that I had finally separated from it. Then the lights flickered, and it turned its head the wrong way around to look at me. Now, the reflections appear where they shouldn't, inside the microwave door, in the window of a turned-off TV. Last night, I saw my own face in the static of an unplugged monitor. It mouthed something over and over. I think it was my name. Or hers. I can't remember which one I am anymore. When I look in a mirror now, the apartment behind me looks cleaner. No notes, no blankets over the glass. Everything in perfect order. Like how I used to keep it before the dreams began. Sometimes I see her there, standing behind me. Other times I see only myself, but the wrong side of my face twitches. The worst part? I've started hearing voices from that world while I'm awake, faintly, like an old radio left on in another room. They're saying my name. Sometimes they ask where I've gone. Sometimes they just laugh. Lately, I've noticed something new. When I close my eyes, I don't fall asleep anymore. I wake up somewhere else. Each time, the world looks a little more like the one with the yellow curtains. It's getting harder to tell which one is real. Maybe none of them are. Maybe they never were. Tonight, when I looked into the mirror, she didn't smile. She looked afraid. She whispered, "Wake up, please. I don't want to be you anymore." Behind her, through the reflections glass, I could see someone standing behind me. The night before it ended, I decided to stop running from mirrors. If the two of us were tangled together, one had to face the other. I turned off every light, except the one above the bathroom sink. The bulb hummed steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat trapped in glass. I took down the blanket and waited for the surface to clear. For a few seconds, the reflection was ordinary. Then the room behind her began to change. The yellow curtains, the flickering streetlight, rain dripping down panes that didn't exist here. She stared back, wide-eyed, trembling. For the first time, I realized I was the one smiling. The mirror rippled. A sound, thin as static, filled the air. Both worlds were aligning, edges overlapping like film reels out of sync. The sink's cold porcelain under my hands felt wrong, softer, like wet paper. She raised her hand in warning. I raised mine in greeting. We touched the glass. It didn't shatter. It folded. The hum of the light grew louder until it was all there was. No sound, no thought, just vibration. The apartment stretched outward, infinite copies of itself spinning away like reflections in opposite mirrors. In each one, another me stared back. Some were smiling, some were screaming. One stepped forward. Everything went white. When color returned, I was standing in the yellow curtain apartment. Only this time, the curtains were open. Outside was my own building, my world, seen from across the street. In the window opposite of mine, I saw her. She was moving inside of my apartment, wearing my face, answering my phone, living my life. She looked up, saw me, and mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I read the words on her lips. "You're dreaming still." The light bulb above me flickered once and went dark. In the black glass of the window, I saw countless reflections waiting, each one a fraction late, each one smiling, each one whispering, "Wake up." I found the story above in a corrupted folder on a hard drive I bought from a pawn shop. The file was named TXT. There was no author listed, just a string of random numbers that looked like a date, November 7th, 2024. At first, I thought it was just some unsure horror piece, until I noticed something strange. Every time I opened the file, one line changed. Not added, changed. Usually it was small, a different word, a missing comma. But after reading it a few times, I realized the changes were specific. They've corrected how I was sitting, what room I was in, even the reflection on my monitor. The last version I opened had a new sentence at the end, one I swear wasn't there before. "Stop reading. She's with you now." I closed the file immediately, but when I looked at my screen's reflection, it was smiling back at me. Story 3. My neighbors joined a book club that only reads one book. I learned what they were reading. It started with one small mention from Mrs. Burton, our neighborhood's grandma. My parents were in our backyard, doing the garden, when she came by with a carrot cake. "Hi, Mrs. Burton," I said. She nodded, smiling, and approached my parents. As I pulled out weed, I overheard them talking about the McField's missing son, the Grovers' ugly new lawn that was ruining the image of the neighborhood, and Cormac Stanner's brand new car, which had windows so dark you couldn't see inside. You really should look into joining the Manuscript Book Club. It helped me a lot. Things were so hard after Ben passed away, but I'm so much better now. I had someone to talk to. My life had purpose, she said to my parents in that pleasant, motherly voice. "Thanks, Mrs. Burton. We'll give it a thought," my mom said, taking the carrot cake from her. Mrs. Burton was your regular sweet old lady. She used to live with her husband, Ben, but he passed away last year. Poor Mrs. Burton was in absolute anguish for the past year, until she appeared to us, spriteful and lively. I thought that she had recovered and found purpose living alone. My phone vibrated. It was my best friend, Zoe. I went into our front porch to return her text. My parents didn't want me talking to Zoe. Damn street rat. Horrible influence on a girl, my dad would often say. We went to the same class from high school until college. She was an orphan and would frequently get in trouble for all sorts of things. Hot wiring a teacher's car and driving around the school, planting a farting balloon under the teacher's seat, starting food fights, and the list went on. But Zoe was always friendly and protective of me. We became friends after she defended me from a school bully using water balloons. Bored out of my mind. "WID?" she texted. "Not much. Doing the garden with my parents." I was texting her and looking at Mrs. Burton, who returned to her house and took out a chair on her front lawn and sat down. She faced the direction of the Grovers, probably musing over how ugly their new lawn was. We lived in a cul-de-sac. There were around 12 families, including ours. We were the kind of neighborhood where most families are wealthy and have a cared-for lawn and 2 kids, normal and boring. Things were going well for my family, at least until that day. Our family was on a road trip. We stopped for a pee break. My mom went into a deep bush while my dad stood behind a large boulder. I was on the front seat, typing away at my phone. Jason, my little brother, was in the back seat looking out of the car. "Megan, look, a fox with strange ear. Look, it's green." I ignored him. A 5-year-old sees all sorts of things. I shouldn't have. I looked up just in time to see him opening the car door and running outside. It happened in the blink of an eye. A truck passed by the road. It didn't stop in time. All I could hear was a loud hissing of the brake pads grinding, and then the skidding sound of tires, and then a loud thud followed by silence. Just like that, my little brother was killed. We were devastated after the accident. My parents didn't blame me, but I did. I should have talked to him, should have looked after him. Instead, I glued my eyes to my phone, talking to Zoe about the latest song by some indie band. And my brother was dead. For weeks, we barely left the house. I sometimes wandered to Jason's room and sat there looking at the paintings that he made on the wall and crying alone. The neighbors were very understanding and gave us plenty of gifts, cakes, and condolences. But we traded them all for Jason back in an instant. We weren't the only family with grief. Every single family of our neighborhood lost someone. Mrs. Burton lost her husband. The Grovers lost their daughter. Cormac Stanner lived alone, but his dog got sick and died. Each of us lost someone dear, so the McFields were understandably worried about their missing son. They put up posters, asked for help on the local radio station, had volunteer groups searching for him in the surrounding forests. Then I started noticing something strange. First, only Mrs. Burton would put out a chair on her lawn, facing the Grovers' house. But then the McFields did the same thing. After that, Cormac Stanner bought an entire recliner on his front porch facing the same direction. The Smiths followed. The Whitakers installed a porch swing. Every day, in the afternoon, they would go to the same spot and look at the Grovers' house for an hour. Eventually, my family was the only one left not taking part in the strange observation. Soon, everything became even stranger. I started hearing voices in the night. I knew it was not a dream. I heard it coming from the direction of the Grovers. It sounded like some people were chanting in unison. I eventually chalked it up to some kind of new song they were practicing for Christmas, and put on my muffler and fell back asleep. Then the visit started. At first, it was only Mrs. Burton. She would come by and leave us the occasional carrot cake, a batch of chocolate chips cookies, or fresh apples from the tree in her backyard. She would talk about how hard it must have been for us, dealing with Jason's death. Then the Smiths come by with fish from their weekend trip. The Grovers with deer meat from their hunt. Even Cormac Stanner visited us with wine, wearing his garish rainbow sweater. They would all tell us how sorry they were about Jason, and then recommend us to take part in the neighborhood book club called the Manuscript. Even my parents saw how weird the whole thing was. They politely declined at first. Your weirdo neighbors give me the creeps. Can never wrap my head around rich people. Zoe texted me when I told her about it, after the shock of Jason's death faded. Something broke in my family. Our dinners were starting to fill with uncomfortable silence, like something was missing. My parents started to argue, then fight. Then after that there would be no apology. I was afraid of being caught in the middle. So I started eating dinner in my room. That was when I was able to observe that the entire neighborhood, save for our family, started gathering at the Grovers at around 8 in the evening. I never saw them leaving. Somehow, they would all be up and about as usual the morning after. Then I started to see my neighbors do this weird exercise where they would kneel down on the grass and put their hands together as if holding up a book. Then they would move their hands forward and bow their heads down close to the ground. They would repeat this 3 times before standing up and go about their days as usual. What was awful was that the neighbors' visits were starting to get to my mom. She mentioned joining the book club a few times to my dad. They just seemed like a bunch of weirdos to me. What will reading books do to help us get over Jason? This town's gone crazy enough with news of people hitting their heads, then rumors of shadows killing people. We'd best keep to ourselves, he said one evening. And their conversation once again turned into an argument. Every time Mrs. Burton dropped by and Dad wasn't home, my mom would ask her about the book club. She asked whether there was a membership fee or anything special one had to do. Turned out it was just a normal book club, save for the fact that they only read one book called a Manuscript. Things were bad, but they were tolerable. It wasn't until Mom went behind Dad's back to attend a reading session at the book club that everything turned out horrible. That morning, my dad said he had some business to take care of in town and wouldn't be back till the evening. Mrs. Burton came by and talked about the book club again. You really should think about it, dear. We're having a reading session today. Would you care to join us just for 15 minutes? My mom hesitated, then nodded her head. 15 minutes turned out to be 2 hours, and when my dad was home early, she was still in the Grover's house, taking part in the little book club. He called her phone. She didn't pick up. He ran around like a madman around the neighborhood, looking for her, with me following. And when we saw her through the glass panels of the Grovers, I guess something inside him snapped. He practically dragged her out of their house, and my dad was generally a gentle person. He told her that he would not have his wife take part in some crazy club, that it sounded just like a religious cult. At least they listened to me. You controlling and abusive asshole. When was the last time you did that? She screamed to his face. I didn't know whose side to take. They were both right. I was torn and felt horrible. So I ran to my room and called Zoe. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. One of the reasons why I'm glad to be an orphan sometimes. No family drama, she said. Things started to go downhill. My parents were no longer eating in the same room. My mom ignored my dad and went to the book club more regularly. She started coming home later and later. Sometimes, I wouldn't even see her the entire evening. My dad started to spend more and more time in his office. Sometimes he didn't even come home. I felt ignored and lonelier than ever. I felt like I was some sort of obstacle to prevent them from a divorce and just ending the miserable pain that was their failing marriage. I spent most of my time cooped up in my room. For once I was glad that the new college semester was coming. It would mean time in the city and away from all of this. In my neighborhood, the strangeness was just ramping up. Mrs. Burton used to be a gentle and caring old lady, but every time I passed by her, she would shoot me this stare, as if I was some sort of street hooker. She wasn't the only one. The Grovers would also give me strange looks whenever I walked outside their house. Cormac, Stanner once looked ready to hunt me down. It wasn't just me. My dad also got the same treatment. We somehow became enemies of the neighborhood. That night, I packed my things and was ready to head to college early. I figured I would spend a couple of days at the dorm reading books. Anything to escape from the hellhole I was in. I asked Zoe to drop by my house. I'd wanted her to sleep over before going to college with me in the morning. My parents didn't care anymore. My dad said nothing, and my mom immediately went to Grover's house after dinner. Zoe and I went to our room and chatted till it was night. I didn't see my mom get back home until 10 p.m. From my window on the second floor, I could see nervousness on her face, but didn't think much of it. Downstairs, it seemed my parents had started to make up because I could hear music and the faint voice of my mom telling my dad that they should get a drink. I was relieved and went to sleep. Zoe woke me that night. She pressed a finger to her lips and pointed me to the window. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. There were several people in dark robes, and they were lining up to enter my house. I heard our front door being opened, then the creaking sounds of footsteps over old woods. I was scared out of my mind. I thought they were burglars and took out my phone to call 911. Zoe put her ears to the door of my room, and after a moment, her eyes widened. She rushed back to bed and told me to pretend I'm sleeping. I shut my eyes as hard as I could and tried my best to not move, but my heart was jumping inside my chest. She's sleeping. I heard a male voice. It seemed to be Henry Grover. We'll come back for her. This time was a female voice. It sounded a lot like Kathy McField. And with that, they walked out of our bedroom. We both waited for what seemed like forever until Zoe slowly got up and peeked outside the window. "Look, they're taking someone," she said and gestured outside. My blood froze the moment I caught eye of who they were taking. It was my dad. He looked like he was still asleep while being carried by his arms and legs. "What the hell is wrong with rich people?" Zoe whispered. "We have to follow them," I said, putting on my hoodie and taking my wallet and phone with me as a habit. We took slow and small steps to not creak the stairs. I looked at my mom's bed. It was empty. We crept downstairs and outside just as one of the road people closed the door to the Grovers' house. We looked around for a moment and then crouched slowly to the Grovers. We had to know what they were doing, but I couldn't come up with anything. Just then, light lit up from the basement. I suddenly recalled that the Grovers' basement had a window. Me and Zoe got to it, making sure to stay hidden from view and only peeking in. In the middle of the basement was a circle of people. They were all facing an altar, on top of which was a closed notebook with a brown leather cover. Then, two men carried my dad to the middle of the circle. "We are the children of the manuscript, and the manuscript is our lifeblood," the robe people said in unison 3 times. My hand trembled, sweat dotted my fingers. Then, a small and familiar figure stepped forward, then removed their robe, and I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was my mom. "We offer this child the manuscript, so that his eyes may be opened," she said and took out a knife. "Oh my God, she's gonna kill your dad. Call the cops, call them now." Zoe hissed. I took my phone out of my pocket, but my hand was too sweaty, and the phone wouldn't recognize my fingerprint or face in the darkness. All the meanwhile, my eyes were glued to the window. The 2 men were holding up my dad now. My mom was approaching him with a knife. I thought about screaming out loud to stop them, but something was holding me back. She raised knife. My eyes burned from not blinking. Then she took my dad's hand and made a small cut on his index finger. "We offer this child the manuscript so that his eyes may be opened. His blood will be the price for initiation," she said, and opened the book on the altar and held his hand over it. Blood dripped from his finger to the notebook and disappeared. Then my dad's head jerked up, his eyes opened wide. A green jet of light entered from the book to his eyes. Then he drooped back down. At this point, I was practically frantic. Zoe put her hand over my mouth and shook her head. She pointed to a corner in the room. My heart sank. There was a shotgun, and next to it, a cage that holds a fox with a clipped ear that was painted bright green. At that moment, I felt something in the air, like being watched from behind. Then I heard the footsteps. "Now, what do we have here, peeping Toms?" A voice called out to us. I was startled. The people in the basement also heard it. Their eyes darted up to where we were standing in unison. I turned around. It was Cormac Stanner. "We were saving this as a present for you, Megan. It seemed you have found your way to us anyway. Ready to accept the blessing of the manuscript?" he asked. His face began to contort into a weird smile and his eyes opened wide. "Run." Zoe screamed. I bolted, but his hands caught me. I struggled and thrashed to no effect. Then Zoe came back and started picking up rocks on the ground and threw them in his face, making loud thuds. "It's Megan we want." "You can scurry off now," he said, shrugging off her attacks like they were nothing. Desperate, I began punching him in the face. That was when I realized his smile never left and his eyes never blinked. I was absolutely freaked out. Then Zoe jumped in front of him and kicked him square in the balls. Cormac Stanner dropped to the ground, his hands holding his crotch, but still smiling and his eyes would not blink. Then we heard a click. The Grovers' front door opened and light streamed out. More than a dozen people spilled out and removed their robe. Henry and Martha Grover, Kathy and Abel McField, Gavin and Chloe Smith, Alexander and Lydia Whitaker, many others, and even Mrs. Burton, and finally, my mom and dad. They looked at us. Then their faces warped into a smile that was way too wide. Their eyes opened and unblinking. There was a period of silence. The air reeked of wet grass and rot. I saw the truth in the manuscript, honey. It helped me move on. It would help you too, my mom said before her mouth turned into a smile again. That's right, honey. I was blind, but now my eyes are open. The manuscript can do the same to you, my dad said. Zoe and I were backing up slowly as the row of people advanced. Slowly. Their hands moved in front of them and made a motion as if to hold a book. We turned and ran. They ran after us, their legs running but their arms still making the book-reading motion, and the smiles never leaving their faces. Zoe pointed at Cormac Stanner's car, and we rushed to it. She took out a screwdriver and did something with the door. The sounds of shoes rapping on the concrete were very close now. I was screaming at the top of my lung for her to hurry up. She opened the car door, and we rushed in just as hands almost grabbed my feet. We held the car door closed while the group of people stood all around it. Zoe ducked down the driver's seat and brought out some wires. "I'm gonna hotwire this thing." "Ever drove a car?" she asked me. Kinda," I stammered, my mind blank. The people were surrounding the car now. Zoe successfully primed the car and the engine started. We switched seats, and I looked up to see that my parents were standing in front of the car. "There's no point running, honey," they told me, their unblinking eyes boring a straight hole to my soul. Zoe looked to me. Our hands found each other. "Shit, looks like no way out," she said. "What the hell do we do?" I asked her, "Hey, Megan, can I borrow your hoodie? Always wanted to wear it. Figured I'd want to wear it once before they caught us." I thought it was a strange request, but listened anyway. I took my hoodie and gave it to her. She put on and gave me a look, tears in her eyes. "Love you more than anything. Come back to save me, okay? Best friends forever," she said, before pulling the hood down her face and rushing out of the car to the line of people. They ran after her. I wanted to open the car door, but something inside me screamed not to. I gave her a tearful look goodbye and slammed on the gas pedal. The car darted away from the neighborhood, away from my childhood, from my parents' failing marriage, from the manuscript, and from Zoe. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been running ever since. New town, new place to crash every few days, never the same place twice. I slept in charity homes and ate their meals. I changed my SIM card. I thought I was safe. Then today, the manager at my latest charity home delivered a speech. "We're starting a new book club to help those in mental pain. We'll be reading the manuscript," he said, his smile too wide. My hair stood on its end. Story 4. I was invited to explore an abandoned asylum We never should have entered that place. I've always liked October and the Halloween vibes it brought. As I got older, I stopped being able to have the same kind of childish wonder towards the season. Watching scary movies late at night or going to haunted houses didn't feel the same. A co-worker must have sensed this and offered that I join a group of his friends for a haunted asylum tour. I didn't know him very well, as we only were together for 2 weeks. I debated whether I wanted to be with strangers for the night. It wasn't as if I had any other plans, so I accepted. He asked me to bring a camera, which he heard I owned. From the sounds of things, he wanted to record our outing and put it on his YouTube channel. I didn't care either way. The handheld camera had been a hand-me-down. It would be nice to finally use it outside of life events for co-workers. We met after work, so he could drive us to this building. I've never heard of an asylum being within driving distance. I told him on the way. It was shut down after a lot of abuse was uncovered, and I mean a lot of nasty stuff. The city did everything it could to wipe the records of place. And locals don't like talking about it, because a lot of their older relatives work there. Brian explained as he drove. I nodded as I half listened. I hadn't even been able to find the name online. They must have done a great deal of scrubbing to erase this place. So well, since I wasn't paying much attention and focused more on my phone during the drive. I didn't know where we ended up. The road slowly became surrounded by trees, then turned into a dirty pathway. I wasn't certain we should be driving along. This building was really out of the way. The trees finally parted, and I could see a massive building on top of a hill that Brian's car struggled against. Some other cars were already waiting for us. A full moon shone between clouds, and a slight breeze caused colored leaves to drift across the unkempt lawn. The white paint peeled off the front of stone walls, and most of the dark windows were broken. This place looked like it came straight out of a bad horror movie. At least I would be getting my Halloween fill this season. We parked with the other 2 cars, and Brian started to introduce everyone. There would be 7 people in total. Kayla, a girl he's known since high school, waved when we walked over. Ryan worked with Brian at their last job. He didn't appear overly excited about the entire idea. I got the sense he was somehow bribed to be here. Liam and his sister arrived next in the same car. They were both tall, and within seconds of meeting them, I got the impression they could be friends with anyone. The last person arrived a few minutes after them, saying how they almost got lost. Okay, good, we're all here. Everyone wearing proper footwear. There are a lot of rusty nails and broken glass inside. How about flashlights? Brian started looking over the group. Most of us had our cell phones for flashlights. He didn't want us using up our batteries, so he handed out small pen lights as well as some walkie-talkies. I was impressed by all of this. Even though I was only working with him for a short time, I didn't have a very high opinion of his work ethic. When he was motivated, it seemed like he thought things through. Are you going to split up and explore in groups? Kayla asked, sounding nervous. No, not if you don't want to. It's up to you guys. I brought the radios just in case. This place is a maze, so it's easy to get lost. Our new friend Benny here will be recording for us, but it would be nice if you guys could as well if you do decide to go off alone. I winced at the nickname. I've asked him 100 times not to call me that. Just Ben was fine. I used my flashlight to look over the side of the building and noticed something I hadn't before. From the tops of the windows, a blackness had curled up and stained the sides. A familiar smell came to the air. Was there a fire here? I asked. For some odd reason, Brian's face grew a little pale. I heard there was one, but it was put out before too much damage was done. I think sometimes homeless people camp here. I don't know why he sounded a little stressed over my question. I ignored it and Kayla spoke up. Are we going to come across anyone inside? She said a little frightened over the idea. Nah, a new shelter opened up, remember? Why would they camp in this place when they have access to warm meals and a free bed? Brian shrugged. Well, just in case no one should go off alone. Let's get everyone's numbers, if we drop the radio or something. Liam suggested. For the next few minutes, we did just that. I realized that most of these people knew Brian, but this was the first time they were meeting each other. I wasn't the odd person out in this group. Everyone ready? Brian asked and got a positive response. A cold wind blew, almost ushering our group inside. An odd feeling came into my stomach as I suddenly wanted to turn back and go home. I shook my head, refusing to back out now. Besides, Brian was my ride, lifting the handheld camera. I followed behind the group, unaware of what waited for us inside. The lobby was massive with cracked tiles. It opened to a large set of wooden stairs that branched out, leading to opposite sides of the building. Our footsteps echoed through the room. Liam and his sister walked ahead of the group to the front desk. He leaned over, looking through the papers that were left behind. They must have closed down suddenly. I think these files have some personal information that shouldn't be left out for anyone to see, he commented, placing the dirty papers back down. It is weird. I've never heard of this place. One of the group commented, yeah, you would think it would be a huge local legend or something. Another person chimed in, which side do you want to start with? Brian asked, ignoring the previous questions. Right, left. Two sets of voices came at the same time. After a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, it was decided we would go left. From the looks of things, the rooms for the staff were on the right, and the patients were on the left. Any treatment rooms were in the basement, and the common areas were on the first floor. It would be impossible for us to look at the entire building in one night. Let's look at the left side, and then go to the basement for the good stuff. Brian said, and we all agreed. We made our way upstairs, the group chattering away, ruining the atmosphere. It wasn't overly upset over that. Sure, I didn't want a spooky night out, but after nearly an hour of recording banter and silly antics of group, I found myself preferring this kind of night over what I expected. Each room we peeked into was more or less the same. Ruined beds with some personal items left behind. It looked like everyone just got up and left. Each item is slowly being overtaken by the elements. Weird how there isn't any graffiti. I commented as we walked down a hallway. Another burst of wind blew through the broken windows, creating a ghastly sound that made some of the group shudder. Oh, you're right. Kayla agreed, looking at the bare and painted walls. A strong smell of something burnt came with the wind, and I found myself covering my nose with my hand. Liam noticed and sniffed the air. What's up? Are you feeling sick? He asked. I shook my head, looking around, trying to find the source of the smell. No, it's like something is on fire. Am I the only one who? I stopped as I looked over the group. It was dark, but with our flashlights, I could see everyone. I counted 6 people. 6? I started looking inside rooms, trying to find the last person. We had been introduced, and yet I couldn't remember their name to call out for them. Are you sure you're not feeling sick? Liam asked, watching me as I darted between rooms. A cold fear came to my chest as I pushed by him and opened the door. Inside was a large operating room. Tools scattered along the floor, an old, massive light hanging overhead, a stained steel table. I left the door open and went to the room next to it. A doctor's office was inside, with an overturned bookcase and files littering the floor. I thought we were in the patient's living area. Why is there an operating room here? I asked, unable to hide the stress in my voice. I saw the small group glance over, faces pale at the realization. Maybe, Kayla started but couldn't think of an answer. Wasn't there 7 of us? I finally said. They all appeared confused. Liam slowly nodded and glanced down at his phone. That was right. We all got each other's numbers. The last person's name should be there. I took out mine, looking at the small contact list. 6 new numbers. I raised my head, meeting Liam's eyes. He was as scared as I felt. I think it's time to leave. I told him sternly. He took hold of his sister's hand, ready to drag her out if needed. Why? Because you can't count? It was always the 6 of us, right? Brian said. I narrowed my eyes at him. For some odd reason, it sounded like he was trying to convince us. Was this a prank they were playing on the new guy? No. I remember adding 7 contacts to my phone. It hadn't left my pocket. Someone couldn't delete it. And everyone here wasn't friends with each other. Only Brian. Movement at the end of the hallway caught my eye. Lifting the flashlight, the beam fell on a dirty gown. The figure hunched over, skin black and cracked. Lifting its head, it looked at us with bright orange eyes as the smell of smoke and burnt meat filled the hallway. Prank or not, I wasn't going to risk it. "Run!" I shouted, and it caused everyone to move at once. I heard screaming as we stumbled over each other. In the chaos, I dropped the handheld camera, but I didn't care. Brian did. He scooped it up and then darted inside one of the side rooms. My vision was blurred as I ran as fast as I could, trying to get out of this damn place. No matter how many times we turned a corner in the hallway, we couldn't seem to find the stairs. If someone was following us, I didn't see it, but I smelled something burnt close by. "This isn't getting us anywhere," Liam said and pulled his sister into a side room. We followed him, out of breath and faces stained with sweat. The room was small and could barely hold all of us. It looked like a solitary confinement cell with scratches on the cement wall. "When we calm down, we'll find a window and get out that way," Liam explained after gasping for some air. I looked around to see who was inside the room. Kayla, Liam, his sister, and me. We were missing a person. "Damn it!" I hissed and checked my phone. His name was still there, which was good. "Did you see where Ryan went?" I asked the group. Each appeared confused over the question, almost as if they didn't know who I was talking about. "I almost forgot him," Kayla whispered, clearly scared what was going on. Lame gripped his sister's hand tighter. We didn't understand what was going on, only that we needed to get the hell out of here. "Okay, we really need to find a window," he said, and we all agreed. Thankfully, the next room had one. It was broken, and Liam wrapped his hand in a torn bedsheet to remove the rest of the pieces around the edges to make it safer. He put his head through, looking out with his flashlight, gauging the distance. "We're on the second floor, I think," he told us. "Won't we, break something if we jump? Can't we find a bedsheet to tie together, or—" Kayla offered. We had closed the door behind us. A sudden scratching noise came from it as the door handle started to turn. I threw my body against the door, keeping it shut as a burst of heat came from the other side. "Better a broken leg than whatever's outside," I said, straining against the force, trying to get in. She nodded, and Liam wanted to try to fit through the window. To his horror, his shoulders were too large. Ducking out, he took hold of his sister and held her through. His face was full of stress as he lowered her out. She promised that since she was a cheerleader in high school, she knew how to fall properly. He took a few deep breaths, then finally let go of her hand, letting her body drop off into the darkness. The rattling and the heat on the other side of the door disappeared when she did. Liam stood by the window, an almost calm expression coming over his face. He turned to us, looking over the two other people in the room. "Who's going to go first?" He offered. Dread came to my stomach. My shoulder hurt from keeping the door shut. I pushed back the pain to ask a question I hoped had a good answer. "Should we see if your sister landed all right?" I asked him, my voice strained. Liam's expression turned to confusion. "Sister?" he asked. I found myself sliding down the wooden door. Kayla choked back sobs and looked away from Liam. Going out a window was an option, and we just lost a person because of it. Liam hadn't fully forgotten her, but her number was no longer my contact list. Maybe there was a slight chance she would be all right. We just needed to get out of here. "All right, let's keep going." I finally stood up. "Where?" Kayla asked, defeated. "Why don't we stay here? People will notice that we're missing." I crossed my arms, wanting more than anything for a rescue party to come and save the day. No matter how much I wanted to believe that I already knew it would be impossible. "Where are we? I mean, what's the name of this asylum?" I asked them. Shocked and sheer horror came over their faces. They didn't know. No matter how hard we tried, we could not remember the name of this place. That meant no one would be coming to save us, as hard as it was to accept. Something natural was happening. I agree with Ben. I think if we try hard enough, we can get out of here, Liam said and walked over to Kayla, taking her hand. I did the same, trying to give her a comforting expression. From what I've gathered, once we separate, we forget about each other. We won't let you go. I told her, trying to smile. Tears were in her eyes. With a deep inhale, she squeezed our hands, a new determination in her eyes. "I'm not some scared little girl. I won't let you guys be kidnapped." She huffed. I was glad that I was with these two. I swore that no matter what, we would get out of here. Slowly, I opened the door into the dark hallway, keeping a hand around Kayla's waist. Liam shone his flashlight down the hallway. A dark shape was a few feet away from us. It didn't react, so we wisely decided to go the other way. We walked down the empty hallway, with closed doors on each side. I kept looking behind us at the figure to make sure it wasn't going to chase after us. I glanced at the room numbers and noticed we were now on the 3rd floor. "I have an idea," I whispered to them. We shuffled into a room, closed the door, and I opened it, peeking out into the new hallway. Every time we went inside a room and left, we ended up in a different part of the building. Even some rooms might be inside different areas, like the operating room appearing on the 2nd floor. Maybe if we go in and out enough rooms, we might end up on the 1st floor. I told them. Liam nodded, glad that we had some sort of plan. I have no idea how long we moved like that, ducking between rooms in a useless attempt to get outside. While inside a patient's room, Kayla paused at a dusty dresser. "It's a cell phone number," she pointed out. Someone had recently written a number in the dust on the dresser. Had Brian been here? I checked my phone and saw it was a number on my contacts list. Was it from someone we were missing? Before I could enter, an overpowering smell came into the room. Our backs had been turned to the bed. We moved too late. A hand came down, gripping Liam's shoulder so hard it made him crumble to the ground. The creature was a thin creature with charred flesh sticking to its frame. Kayla screamed as a burn patch started to spread along Liam's shoulder, melting away part of the shirt. My body froze as I met the creature's eyes. My entire soul was suddenly filled with so much sorrow I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Tears sting my eyes, and I was positive we would have died there if it weren't for the 3rd person in the room. Kayla found a broken piece of a wooden chair in the corner. She grabbed the thickest part and swung it like a bat. It shattered on the creature's skull, snapping the head back so far that I thought it would come off. It screamed and then disappeared into the floor, leaving its attacker panting with a broken piece of wood in her hands. I went to see how Liam was. It took a minute before he was able to stand up. The burn was not as bad as it could have been. "Thanks," we told Kayla, a little bit in shock over her outburst. "Let's just find a weapon and just smash the shit out of all the scary bastards in here," she said, her green eyes shining in the darkness. I now would much rather deal with whatever monsters were in the dark than ever have her angry at me. Well, I started and didn't need to finish that thought. Countless darkened, burned hands came from the walls, reaching for us. As much as Kayla wanted to fight back, she was no match for this. We grabbed hold of her, and the 3 of us hauled ass back into the hallway. We almost ran over another one of those darkened creatures. It reached out with thin arms, hands like claws ready to rip into flesh. We avoided it, and ended up weaving between more of those things. We were on the move, and stopping meant being overtaken by a swarm of hands that wanted to rip flesh from bones. As we ran, I kept seeing the same cell phone number written along the walls and on the floors. I didn't have time to stop and call it. We crashed into another operating room, shortly realizing our mistake. So many of those burnt bodies squirmed through the only exit. Kayla grabbed and forepole to keep the mass back, as Liam used the steel table to create some distance. A hand landed on my wrist. I grabbed a scalpel from the table, ready to bring it down on my attacker. Our eyes met, and for that single moment, I wasn't looking at a monster. Instead, I stared at a scared young girl asking for help. The blade dropped from my hands. As if in a trance, I reached out for her, barely aware of the burning coming from where her hand touched my wrist. I suddenly wanted to hold her, to tell her I would get her out of this place, that things would be all right. A hand took hold of the back of my shirt. I found myself falling as the floor gave out, the 3 of us tumbling down somewhere unknown. I must have been knocked out. I felt a warm hand on my cheek and a voice asking if I was all right. Opening my eyes, I saw we were in an empty room with a ceiling so high I couldn't see the top. It felt more like a pit than a room. Sitting up, I say Kayla, sitting next to me, some scratches and bruises, but she was all right. Liam wasn't doing as well. The burn on his shoulder spread. He sat against the wall, barely able to keep his eyes open. Another person was in the room with us. Brian was on his back, blood on his forehead, eyes closed as he clutched the camera as if his life depended on it. A large steel door took up most of the left wall. I could hear inhuman yowling from the other side as it got closer. "I don't know how to get out of here," Kayla admitted. I took her hand, wishing I had the answers. The way out wouldn't just fall into our laps, right? "I found this when we went here." She nodded towards a piece of yellowing paper nailed to the stone wall. It had the same cell phone number she saw before. We looked at each other, deciding if it was worth the risk. From the sounds of things and the heat coming from the steel door, we didn't have a lot of time to think about it. I pulled out my phone, thankful it still had power left. I did try 911 first. Nothing. I then tried the mystery number. After a few rings, someone finally answered. "Took you long enough," the person snapped. We all jumped because the voice was inside the room with us. I got between the newcomer and Kayla, uncertain if I could defend her from them. No matter how hard I looked them over, I could not figure out their gender. They were thin with messy red hair, cut at their shoulders. A tight black sleeveless workout shirt clings to every muscle and shows off a flat chest, as well as how thin they were. A set of baggy khakis didn't match the shirt. Neither did a pair of slim high-heeled shoes. One was standing on Brian's chest. "Who?" I asked, stunned at the newcomer's appearance. "Jake." They responded. "Jake is a little hot." Kayla whispered in my ear. I gave her a raised eyebrow, but didn't say anything. She'd been through enough tonight. She didn't need me judging her. "Get up, you little shit." Without warning, Jake kicked Brian hard enough to send his body rolling. He gasped, clutching his sore side. He spotted the camera he let go of and then scrambled for it. Hake reached it first, the heels coming down, smashing it to pieces. "You bitch!" Brian yelled, ready to attack her. A strong leg came out, knocking him senseless. I sat, not wanting to get in between any of this. From the looks of things, these two had met before. "Hurry up and get us out of here. I'll give you anyone here that you want," Brian said between bloody teeth. Jake crossed her arms, a nasty look on her face. She had a scar on one side of her lip that made it look like a gruesome smile, even while frowning. "You've done this before?" Liam struggling to speak. I felt so stupid. Brian had lured us all here for what? For footage for his dumb YouTube channel? He already knew how to travel through rooms to avoid those monsters, and he already planned on calling Jake, offering whoever was left to save his own skin. I offered to save him, and this guy paid with his girlfriend. Jake said, curling a piece of bright red hair between her fingers. She was a cutie. I guess he thought he could pull the same shit twice. "Kayla is cute, take her," Brian said, standing up only to get his legs swept out from under him. "I do this kind of thing for fun. Listening to your whiny demands isn't fun. Besides, you weren't the one who called me, so I don't need to listen to whatever you want," she said, crossing her arms again, and her eyes landed in my direction. My heart started to race. We could get out of here. I just needed to deal with this childish weirdo. "You can do whatever you want with me. Just save Dash." I started, and Jake gave another scowl. "Boring," she hissed, turning her nose up to my offer. I looked over at Liam, knowing he didn't have a lot of time left. Even if there weren't monsters at the door ready to break it down, he needed help fast. There were 7 of us. I started, and Jake glanced over, almost interested. I don't remember the 7th, but I know Ryan's name, and that Liam was here with his sister. "Are they still alive?" I asked, hoping for answers. Jake appearing out of thin air, and her overall vibe gave me the impression she wasn't normal. Maybe she knew more about this place than we did. "Yes, the people who die here become a part of this place. They are wiped from existence, like how all the patients were. This isn't a real place. It's an amalgamation of the suffering of the ones who died because of the system they were forced into." Jake explained and sounded almost normal. I assume it lets certain people know about it because it wants to lure new victims. I nodded then frowned. They weren't all fully forgotten. Didn't some of them have families on the outside? Even being buried in an unmarked grave or burned, there must be someone out there who remembers some of these people. I was mostly talking to myself. The creatures who chased us weren't monsters, just someone who had been hurt by the real monsters. Is there any way to help them? I asked, and it caused Jake to burst out into cruel laughter. I'm reconsidering your offer. You cannot help them here. You'll only be dragging them into their pain. The only way to help is to make the public aware of the abuse people suffered in these systems. To do that, you need to get out. Now, what are you going to offer me to make it worth my time? She stood tall, hands on her hips, with a smug look on her face. She held all the cards, and I needed to figure out what she wanted. You can do whatever you want with me, I said, and got a nasty look as a response. I then pointed a finger over to Brian, and you can have him, I finally said. He shot up, bloodshot face red with rage. You can't just hand me over like that. He shouted, looking as if he might strangle me. Jake might eat me, or worse. I'm offering myself to save all of you. You guys owe me your lives. Since you owe me, I'm offering you as well. I said, only making Brian even more furious. That's stupid. It doesn't make sense. He snapped, stomping a foot. You're right, and I like stupid. Okay, done deal. I assume you want those other two. Hang on. Without warning, Brian fell to the floor with a yelp. Jake followed after leaving the room, silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, Liam shot up, face a mixture of pain and confusion. My sister, where is she? I dropped her but dashed. Kayla went over to him and helped him back to the ground. Jake appeared without the two other people we were missing. She told us they were outside and that she just needed to get us free next. You'd better be worth it. This will take a lot out of me. She huffed and walked towards the door, her heels clicking. Get ready to run. With some effort, I got Liam on my back. There was no other option. Kayla steadied herself. She knew that if I was falling behind, I wanted her to leave us. I would rather one person get out of this place alive. Jake threw open the door to a hell on the other side. Countless bodies were crammed into each other, screaming and reaching for warm, living bodies. A burst of flame shot out from Jake's mouth, her hair glowing as bright as the flames in front of her. The screaming grew louder as the bodies caught fire. My eyes water and skin sting from the heat. We pressed on, knowing we would die if we stopped. Jake cackled as she ran, each heel denting the floor from the force of her footsteps. A sleek body darted around the room, flames coming from her mouth and hands setting fire to anything that tried to attack us. We ran hard, my body straining against the weight on my back. I refused to leave Liam behind. We reached a set of stairs that felt endless. A fiery, cackling maniac led the way as so many hands clamored after us, nipping at our heels. We finally arrived at the lobby, the end in sight. A sea of bodies came flooding down the stairs, threatening to engulf us. Jake put herself between us, feet firmly planted, ready to set forth the largest blast of flames that could take down the entire building. Kayla got through the doors first, followed her, and set Liam down on the cold steps. She shouted as I turned on my heels to go back inside. I'd seen something in that crowd of crying flesh I refused to leave behind. Jake was already unleashing a sea of flames. I pushed through it, feeling the heat on my flesh and my shirt burning away. My hands reached out into the bodies, taking hold of a small hand. With the last of my strength, I pulled the thin person into my arms, and the heat overtook everything. I woke up on the cool grass, a foot painfully nudging my side. Opening my eyes, I saw a brightening sky and Kayla's worried face. Jake already took everyone to be treated. I thought you weren't going to wake up, she explained. I sat up with my entire body in pain. I wasn't as burned as I thought, mostly a sunburn on my arms. Next to me was a human-shaped bundle wrapped in a dirty sheet. The building was missing, leaving the hillside empty. I couldn't leave her behind. I told Kayla, placing a hand on the bundle next to me. Soft boys like you tend to get swept up into places like these. You're lucky I could pull you out of it. Jake said, very annoyed. Thank you. I told her, her face flushed in a way I wasn't expecting. You're lucky I'm so nice. In fact, I'm so nice I'll take the body you saved and make sure she's buried properly. I was glad for the offer. I doubted I could show up with a random corpse and ask the police to identify her without there being a lot of questions. What do I owe you? I asked, almost scared of the answer. Jake paused, thinking almost as if she wasn't sure. She made a scene of muttering to herself and puttering around. Pancakes. She finally said. Kayla and I looked at each other with a matching expression. There is a breakfast place I've been wanting to try, but it's only open in the mornings. I never wake up before noon. Buy me some and bring them over, and we're even. Jake nodded. That's it, I said, mentally kicking myself after I asked. What? Did you want to, eat you or something? You don't have an ounce of meat on your bones, and it would take too long to fatten you up. With that last comment, she tossed a set of keys into my lap that belonged to Brian's car. Thank you, I told her again, and she stuck her tongue out as if I said something disgusting. I still had her cell phone number, so we could figure out the pancake day and how many she wanted. I might be stuck delivering breakfast to this weirdo for a long while, and I was perfectly all right with that. Story 5. We found something in the woods that grants wishes. I'm the only one who survived, and tomorrow I'm going back. The thing about Ryan was that he never committed to anything scary. Horror movies were out. Roller coasters were out. Even choosing colleges stressed him out because it meant closing doors, making something real and final. His therapist called it decision paralysis. I called it self-preservation. When your dad walks out and your mom stops getting out of bed, you learn that some questions are better left unasked. I understood that. Ryan's mom had the kind of depression that kept the curtains drawn for weeks at a time. His dad left when Ryan was 11, and the last thing the guy said before walking out was that Ryan needed to man up and help your mother. So Ryan learned to be quiet, to fade into the background rooms, to make himself small enough that his presence wouldn't be another burden for anyone to carry. Casey was the opposite. She took up space like she'd been told her whole life she deserved to. Student council, debate team, Instagram aesthetic. So carefully curated, it looked effortless. Her parents were the kind of people who showed up to every event with professional cameras, who had her entire academic future mapped out on a literal poster board in their home office. Yale, then law school, then partnership in her father's firm. The thing was, Casey actually wanted none of that. She told me once, sophomore year, that she wished she could just work in a plant nursery, spend her days with her hands in dirt, helping things grow. But she'd said it like it was a joke, like the idea of disappointing her parents was so unthinkable it could only exist as fantasy. And Luke was more complicated than I wanted him to be. He was tall, played varsity football, had the kind of easy confidence that came from never being told he couldn't do something. But here's the thing nobody else seemed to notice. Luke's dad hit him. Not often enough to leave marks that lasted, but enough. I'd seen Luke flinch once when Ryan clapped him on the shoulder too suddenly. Seen the way he stood sometimes, favoring his left side like his ribs were sore. He never talked about it, and I never asked, but it was there between us like smoke. That's why he cheated on Casey. Probably. Self-sabotage as a kind of protection. If you ruin it first, nobody can take it from you. I understood the logic, even if I hated what it did to her. Even if watching her take him back felt like watching someone walk into traffic. Me, I was just trying to get through high school without my own damage becoming everyone else's problem. The folklore started on a Reddit thread. Someone's uncle's co-worker knew a guy who'd gone into the woods behind County Memorial and come back wrong. Different. Kept talking about prices and payments and how everything cost something. 3 weeks later, he drove his truck into the lake with his whole family inside. It's bullshit, Ryan had said when Casey first brought it up, but his fingers were already drumming that nervous pattern on his knee. The one that meant he was thinking about it too hard, letting it get under his skin. Probably, Casey said. She was scrolling through satellite images of the hospital on her phone. zooming in on the forest that pressed against its southern edge. But wouldn't it be cool to check out? Just the hospital, urban exploration. The hospital had been abandoned since 2003. County Memorial, built in the 40s, shut down after some Medicare fraud thing bankrupted the board. 6 stories of brick and broken windows, wrapped in chain link and covered in the kind of graffiti that suggested people came here specifically to be forgotten. The forest beyond was old growth pine, dense enough that hikers got lost every few years. Search parties, helicopters, the whole production. Sometimes they found the bodies. We were standing by Casey's locker between third and fourth period when she pitched the idea. Ryan looked like he wanted to crawl into the ventilation system. I was trying to figure out how to say no without sounding as scared as I felt when Luke appeared. He had this way of moving through crowds like they were designed to part for him. People just stepped aside. He came up behind Casey and wrapped his arms around her waist, lifting her off her feet. She shrieked, kicking her legs, laughing in that way that made my stomach hurt. "What are we talking about?" Luke asked, setting her down. Casey turned in his arms, already grinning. "The hospital. The one with the woods out back. We're thinking of exploring it." "Sounds boring," Luke said, but he was looking at me when he said it, one eyebrow raised. "Unless you're afraid." There it was, the hook. Luke knew exactly what he was doing. He'd been doing it since middle school, this casual needling that made saying no feel like admitting weakness. It was manipulative and obvious, and it worked anyway because I was 17 and stupid. "Tonight," I said, 7 o'clock. Luke smiled. Ryan looked like he might throw up. I told my parents I was sleeping at Ryan's. They barely looked up from their respective screens. My dad worked in insurance. My mom taught elementary school, and both of them seemed relieved I had friends to occupy my time. Teenagers were a mystery they decided not to solve. I climbed out my bedroom window at 6:30, dropping into the backyard with an impact that made my ankles ache. My bike was old, inherited from a cousin, and the chain made a clicking sound that seemed too loud in the quiet suburban evening. I texted Ryan that I was heading out. He sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. The hospital was 4 miles away, past a nice part of town, and into the part where houses had bars on the windows. The sun was setting, turning the sky the color of a bruise. By the time I reached the parking lot, full dark had fallen. The place looked worse than the photo suggested. The fog was real, thick enough that it pooled in low spots like something liquid. The hospital loomed beyond it, all those shattered windows like eye sockets in the skull. Someone had painted Memento Mori across the main entrance in dripping red letters. My breath came out in clouds. October in New England, the kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. I tried Ryan's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Casey's rang 4 times and went to her cheerful recording. I took a photo, posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Bad decisions, loading," and watched it get 3 likes before I'd even pocketed my phone. Headlights swept across the lot. Luke's Camaro, black and impractical, his dad's cast off. The engine ticked as it cooled. Luke climbed out first, Casey from the passenger side. She was wearing his Letterman jacket over her hoodie, drowning in it. "Jesus," Luke said, breath fogging. "It's freezing. Remind me why we're doing this." "Adventure," Casey said, but she lost some of that enthusiasm from earlier. She looked small in the empty parking lot. Younger than usual. "Ryan's not here yet," I said. Luke snorted, probably chickened out. Then we heard the bike. Ryan came pedaling into the lot like he was being chased, skidding to a stop next to mine. His helmet was crooked, his face flushed red from cold and exertion. "Where the hell were you?" I asked. "I called." "Got lost," Ryan panted. "No signal out here. Everything looks the same in the dark." Casey was staring at the hospital now, really looking at it. "Maybe this is stupid," she said quietly. "Maybe we should just go home." "We drove all the way out here," Luke said. He was already walking toward the building, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Come on." We followed the fence line around the back. Up close, the hospital felt worse, bigger, more present, like it was aware of us in some fundamental way. The windows on the ground floor were boarded over, but higher up they gaped open, and I kept expecting to see movement in them. A face, a hand. Ryan was breathing too fast, that panicky rhythm that meant he was spiraling. I'd seen it before, usually during tests or when his mom called during school. The forest pressed against a fence. Trees so dense they looked solid. Pine and oak, and something that made the air smell like decay. We found a spot where someone had cut the chain link and peeled it back like the lid on a can. So we're really doing this? Casey asked. Nobody answered. Luke went first, ducking through. Then Casey. Then me and Ryan, who looked like he was walking to his execution. The forest was colder. That shouldn't have been possible, but it was. Our phone lights made narrow tunnels in the dark, catching on bark and exposed roots and something that might have been animal bones. We walked single file, nobody speaking. There was no path, just trees and darkness and the sound of our breathing. 5 minutes in, Luke stopped. "This is stupid," he said. "There's nothing here. Let's go back. Check out the hospital instead." "Yeah," Casey said quickly. "The hospital. Better idea." We turned around. That's when something moved in the trees behind us. Heavy, deliberate, the sound of something large displacing air. Casey backed into Luke, grabbing his arm. Ryan had gone statue still, and when I looked at him, his face had lost all color. "Animal," Luke said, but his voice was wrong. Too high. The thing moved again. Closer, and when it came a sound like wind chimes made a bone, a clicking rattle that made my teeth ache. It stepped into the light. I want to tell you I processed what I was seeing, that my brain took in the details and categorized them in any useful way. But that's not what happened. What happened was my mind just stopped, like a computer program hitting a fatal error. 7 feet tall, maybe more. A shape that suggested a body but refused to confirm one, draped in moss and forest rot, organic material that might have been fabric or flesh or something in between. And the head, God, a deer skull, bleached white, antlers spreading like broken fingers. Around its neck, strung on what looked like sinew, hung dozens of teeth. Human teeth, maybe, or animal. The distinction seemed less important than the fact of their existence. It had no eyes, but I felt it looking at us, looking into us. Luke made a sound I'd never heard him make before, something between a sob and a laugh. The thing's jaw opened, not like a jaw should, but hinging wrong, too wide. And when it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, from inside my skull, and from the ground and from the air itself. "You come to wish." The word scraped like rusted metal dragging a crossbone. "All of you must wish." Casey was crying. I could hear it, small hitching sobs behind me. But I couldn't turn to look at her, couldn't stop staring at the creature, at the way it seemed to shift and settle, like it wasn't quite solid, wasn't quite real. The skull twitched toward Ryan. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were shaking so badly I could see it even in the bad light. "Wish," the creature said, and its voice got louder, resonant, shaking the trees. "Wish now." "I wish," Ryan started, then stopped. His voice was barely a whisper. "I wish to know if God is real." I don't know what I expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe for the thing to laugh or vanish, or tell us we were all idiots playing with urban legends. But that's not what happened. The creature convulsed. Its body, that shapeless mass, began twitching violently, and the deer skull lurched sideways at an angle that made my stomach turn. The bone necklace rattled in the opposite direction, spinning, and the sound it made was like grinding vertebrae. Ryan screamed, not a shout or a yell, a scream, the kind that carries agony and terror in equal measure. That sound like someone being unmade at the molecular level. His hand shot to his head, fingers clawing at his skull, and then I saw it happen. His head was collapsing inward. The bones of his skull were folding like paper, caving on themselves, and his face, Ryan's face, the one I'd known since we were 12, was disappearing into the void it left behind. The skin went slack and then concave, and the scream cut off into something wet and horrible, and then into nothing at all. He hit the ground. Casey's scream replaced his, raw and primal. Luke grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. "Run," he said. We ran. I crashed through a low-hanging branch that whipped across my face, bark scraping my cheek raw. My phone was in my hand, light jerking wildly, turning the forest into a strobe nightmare of trees and shadows, and nothing that made sense. Behind us, I could hear it, that rattling, bone on bone, getting closer. Casey was sobbing as she ran, these gasping, hitching breaths between footfalls. Luke was ahead of her, pulling her by the wrist, and I was behind them both, and I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan, about the way his face had just collapsed, folded on itself like wet cardboard. My foot caught on a root, and I went down hard, phone flying from my hand. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. I scrabbled in the dirt, fingers finding leaves and moss and something that felt horribly like bone before my hand closed around phone. The light was facing back the way we'd come. The creature was there, not far, maybe 20 feet, moving through the trees with that horrible fluid motion, branches bending around it like they were afraid to touch it. The deer skull was angled toward me, antlers scraping bark, and the bone necklace swayed and clattered with each movement. I could see details now that I hadn't before. The way the moss covering its body seemed to grow and shift, pulsing like something alive. The teeth on the necklace weren't all the same size. Some were small, child-sized. Others were long and pointed, predator teeth. And there were other things strung between them. Small bones. Finger bones, maybe. And something that looked horrifyingly like a dried human ear. Get up. Luke's voice, somewhere ahead in the darkness. I rolled onto my hands and knees, pushed myself up. My ankle screamed in protest, but held. I ran. The forest had become a maze. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow held something terrible. My lungs burned. The cold air felt like breathing broken glass. I could hear Luke and Casey ahead, crashing through undergrowth, and I pushed harder, trying to catch up. Behind me, that rattling never stopped. It stayed constant, rhythmic, like the creature was pacing itself, like it knew it didn't need to rush. Like this was all part of something it had done 1,000 times before. My phone light caught Casey's jacket ahead. That bright red. I focused on it, used it as a beacon. We were running uphill now. The ground getting steeper, roots reaching across the path like fingers trying to trip us. My thighs burned. My ankle throbbed with each impact. Then Casey went down. She cried out, a sharp yelp of pain, and Luke skidded to a stop. I nearly crashed into him. Casey was on the ground, clutching her leg, her phone a few feet away, casting crazy shadows across her face. I can't, she gasped. My ankle, I can't. Luke looked back. Even in the bad light, I could see his face. The calculation happening there. The math of who lives and who dies. Help me get her up, I said, moving to Casey's other side. We each took an arm, hauled her to her feet. She whimpered, tried to put weight on her right leg, and nearly collapsed again. Luke and I locked our arms behind her back, made a kind of chair. She looped her arms around our necks. We moved slower now, so much slower. Casey's weight between us, her breathing ragged in my ear. The creature's rattling got louder, closer. I could feel its presence like a pressure change, like the air itself was being displaced by something too large, too wrong. There, Luke panted. I see the fence. And there it was, chain link glinting in our phone lights, and beyond it, the dark mass of the hospital. We were coming at it from an angle, not the way we'd entered. This section of fence was intact, but there was a spot, maybe 10 yards down, where it had been peeled back. We staggered toward it, Casey's weight making every step feel like we were wading through concrete. 5 yards. 3. Behind us, branches cracked. Not the small pops of twigs breaking. The deep groan of something large pushing through resistance. I risked a look back. The creature had closed the distance. It was right there, maybe 15 feet away, and in the better light near the fence line, I could see it clearly for the first time. It wasn't wearing the moss and rot. That was its skin, bark and organic material fused together into something that might have once been alive, but had evolved past that into something else. The deer skull was partially embedded in its body, grown into it, and where the skull ended and the body began was impossible to determine. The antlers weren't antlers at all. They were bones, human bones, femurs and radius and ulna, all twisted, and fused together into that branching structure. And the worst part, the part that made my bladder almost let go, was that the skull was moving. Not the creature's head, but the skull itself. The jaw was opening and closing in a rhythm that matched the rattling of the bone necklace. And I could see something behind the bone, something dark and writhing, like the inside of the skull was full of worms or maggots or things that squirmed. Go, go, go! I screamed. We hit the fence line. Luke dropped Casey's arm, grabbed the peeled-back section, and hauled it up. The metal shrieked. Casey went under first, on her hands and knees, crawling. I was right behind her, and behind me I could hear the creature moving faster now. Could hear that rattling building to a crescendo. I was halfway under when I felt something grab my jacket. Not a hand. Nothing as simple as a hand. Something that felt like it had too many points of contact, like it was gripping me in 6 places at once. The fabric pulled taut, yanking me backward, and I screamed. Casey was on the other side, reaching back through, grabbing my arms. Luke was there too, pulling. I was caught between them, the fence cutting into my back, the creature's grip tightening. I could smell it now, rot and earth and something sweet underneath, like decomposition, like me going bad in the sun. My jacket tore. The sound was loud, that ripping canvas noise, and suddenly I was sliding forward under the fence, Luke and Casey falling backward with me on top. We landed in a heap on the asphalt. I rolled, looked back. The creature was pressed against the fence, not trying to climb it or break through, just standing there, that deer skull tilted, watching us. The bone necklace had gone still. In the parking lot lights, I could see my jacket, or what was left of it, hanging from one of the fence posts. It was shredded, not cut, shredded, like something with claws had grabbed it. But the creature had no hands. "Come on," Luke said, already pulling Casey to her feet. "The hospital. We get inside, we're safe." I didn't know what made him think that. Didn't know what made him think we'd be safe anywhere. But the alternative was standing here in the parking lot while that thing watched us. So I got up and ran. The hospital entrance gaped open. Someone had torn the boards off years ago. Inside was darkness, deep in the forest, and that smell, mold and decay and stale air that hadn't moved in decades. Our phones lit the way, catching on debris. A wheelchair rusted, one wheel missing. Medical charts scattered across the floor, patient names still visible, and 4 stand lying on its side. We moved into the lobby, a wide open space with a reception desk that had been stripped of anything valuable. The floor was tile, broken in places, and our footsteps echoed wrong. Too loud, like the building was paying attention. "We can't stay here," Casey said. She was limping badly, putting almost no weight on her right leg. "It'll come in. It'll find us. Then we go up," Luke said, gesturing to a stairwell on the far side of the lobby. "Get to the 2nd floor. Find a room we can barricade. Or we go straight through," I said, pointing to a hallway that led deeper into the building. "Find the other side. Get back to the parking lot. Get to the car." Luke looked at Casey, then at me. I saw the decision forming. Saw the exact moment he chose. "Through is faster," he said, already moving toward the hallway. We followed, Casey between us again, hobbling, trying to keep up. The hallway was narrower than the lobby, doors lining both sides. Most were closed. Some hung open, revealing rooms full of stripped beds and broken equipment. Our phone lights made everything worse, turning shadows into threats, making every corner a potential ambush. We passed the nurse's station. The desk was overturned, papers everywhere, and something had made a nest in the corner. I couldn't tell what. Blankets and trash and something else. Something organic that I didn't want to look at too closely. Then we heard it behind us. That rattling. Inside the building now. In the lobby. The sound echoed off the walls, distorted, making it impossible to tell exactly where it was coming from. But it was close. Getting closer. Faster, Luke hissed. Casey was crying again, quiet sobs that she was trying to muffle. We were moving as fast as we could, but her ankle was bad, really bad, and each step was agony for her. I could feel in the way she gripped my shoulder, nails digging in through my shirt. The hallway branched. Luke took the left corridor, without hesitating. We followed. This hallway was darker somehow, fewer windows, and the air felt thicker, harder to breathe, like the building's decay had concentrated here. Behind us, the rattling got louder. I risked to look back and saw nothing but darkness and the pathetic throw of our phone lights. But I could feel it. That presence. That wrongness. There, Luke said, pointing ahead. A door, different from the others. Metal instead of wood, with a small window set at eye level. Emergency exit. Maybe a way out. We stumbled toward it, Casey whimpering with each step, and Luke hit it at full speed. It didn't budge. He slammed into it, bounced back, tried the handle. Locked. He threw his shoulder against it again and again, and the door rattled in its frame, but held. Fuck, he said. Fuck, F-U-C-K. The rattling was louder now, so loud it seemed to come from the walls themselves. I turned, putting myself between Casey and the direction we'd come, and my phone light caught movement at the end of the hallway. The creature was there. It had a hunch to fit in the corridor, that deer skull scraping the ceiling tiles. Bits of acoustic foam rained down as it moved, and the sound of its passage was wrong, wet and grinding, like meat being forced through a space too small. Luke, I said, and my voice was surprisingly steady. We need to move. The door's locked. Then we find another door. Luke grabbed Casey's arm and pulled her away from the exit. We ran back the way we'd come, but the creature was blocking that path now. So we took the first door we came to. It opened into a patient room, and we slammed it shut behind us. The room was small. A single bed, stripped of the frame. A window with bars on it. Glass long gone, letting in cold air and the smell of the forest. A small bathroom in the corner, door hanging off one hinge. We're trapped, Casey said. She'd given up trying to stop crying. Tears tracked down her face, catching in our phone lights. We're trapped and it's going to kill us. There has to be another way out, I said, moving to the window. The bars were solid, old but not rusted enough to break. I shook them anyway. They didn't move. Behind us, in the hallway, the rattling had stopped. The silence was worse. So much worse. Because silence meant it was listening, hunting, planning. Luke was at the door, ear pressed against it, trying to hear movement. His hand was on the handle, knuckles white. I don't hear anything, he whispered. That doesn't mean it's not there, Casey said. We waited. Seconds that felt like hours. My heart was beating so hard I could feel in my throat, in my temples. The cold air from the window made me shiver. Or maybe that was just fear. Probably fear. Then something scraped against the door. Not a knock. A long, drawn-out scrape, like bone on metal. The door shuddered. Luke jumped back, nearly dropping his phone. The scraping came again, lower this time, then higher, like the thing was testing the door, learning its dimensions. The handle started to turn. Luke grabbed it, tried to hold it, but the force on the other side was immense. The handle turned despite his grip, despite him throwing his weight against it, and the door began to open. Help me? Luke screamed. I ran to the door, added my weight. Casey was there too, her bad ankle forgotten, all of us pressing against the door as it slowly, inexorably opened. It was like trying to hold back a freight train, like trying to stop gravity. The door opened 6 inches, then a foot. Through the gap, I could see the hallway, and I could see the creature. It had changed, or maybe I was just seeing it more clearly. The deer skull was at ground level now, and I realized the creature didn't have a fixed orientation. It could move in any direction, could reorient itself however it needed. The skull was sideways now, antlers scraping the doorframe, and behind it, that body of moss and rotten wrong. In the darkness behind the skull's eye sockets, I saw movement, saw things writhing. The door opened another foot. The bathroom! Casey screamed. Go, go! We broke, all of us at once, abandoning the door and sprinting for the bathroom. It was tiny, barely enough room for the 3 of us, but we crammed inside, and Luke grabbed the door. This one was lighter, flimsier, but it had a lock. He turned it just as the patient room door slammed open behind us. The creature filled the doorway. Through the crack at the bottom of the bathroom door, I could see it. Could see that mass of organic material spreading across the tile. And the shadow it cast was wrong. Too many angles. Too much depth. Then came the voice. Wish, it said, and the word rattled to the building. Must wish. All must wish. Luke's face was white. He was backed against the sink, hands gripping the porcelain like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Casey was in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. The door shuddered. Something hit it heavy and the wood cracked. Wish, the creature said again. You, wish, now. The door splintered. Wood shards exploded inward. A piece hit my arm, drawing blood. Through the hole in the door, I could see the deer skull. Could see those empty sockets looking in at us. Luke's voice came out strangled, desperate. I wish you were dead, he said. I wish you were fucking dead. The creature's response was immediate. The deer skull snapped back, and that rattling started again, frenzied, and Luke's hands flew to his back. He screamed, not like Ryan. Different. This was a scream of confusion more than pain, at least at first. Then the pain came. I watched his body arch backward, watched his shirt collapse inward like something was being pulled out from underneath, and I understood. The creature was removing his spine. Not all at once. Bone by bone. Vertebra by vertebra. I could see them going. I could see the shirt fabric cave where each bone disappeared. Luke's body bent backward, farther than any body should bend, and the scream went on until his lungs couldn't support it anymore and became a wet gurgle. Then he fell. Casey was screaming, had been screaming. I grabbed her, pulled her close, but she fought me, pushed me away. No, she shouted at the creature, at the deer skull, watching us through the broken door. I wish none of this ever happened. I wish we never came here. And the world broke. That's the only way I can describe it. Reality fractured like glass, and through the cracks I could see something else. Other versions of this moment. Other timelines where we made different choices, where we didn't come, where we turned back, where Ryan said something else. All of them existing simultaneously, overlapping, bleeding into each other. The buzzing started in my skull, building and building until I thought my head would explode. The bathroom walls rippled like water. Casey was there and then not there, and then there again, flickering like a broken film strip. The creature's rattling became a roar, became everything, became the only sound in existence. I fell, or flew, or both. Time inverted, collapsed, expanded. I saw Orion's face caving in again, but backward. Saw it inflate like a balloon. Saw Luke's spine returning, then disappearing again. Saw Casey running, screaming, laughing, all at the same time. Then it stopped. Complete silence. Complete stillness. I was on my back, staring up at nothing. No, not nothing. Stars. I was staring at stars. My hands were on asphalt, cold and rough. I sat up slowly, carefully, like any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile reality had formed around me. I was in the parking lot, not near it, in it, lying next to Luke's Camaro. The driver's side door hung open. The dome light was on, casting everything in sickly yellow. I stood. My legs shook, but held. I turned slowly, taking in the parking lot, the hospital in the distance, the forest pressing against the fence line, and Luke's car. I knew before I looked. Somehow I knew, but I looked anyway. Luke was in the driver's seat, slumped over the steering wheel. His body bent at an angle that was only possible because there was nothing inside to stop it bending that way. His shirt had collapsed inward, empty, and even from outside the car I could see the void where his spine should have been. I made a sound, not quite a scream, not quite a sob, something in between. I walked around to the passenger side on legs that didn't feel like mine, opened the door with hands that had forgotten how to shake. Casey was there, folded in on herself like origami, her torso compressed, caved in, her body bent over her knees in a way that revealed a complete absence of ribs. Her rib cage was gone, removed, taken as payment. Her head rested on the dashboard, eyes open but not seeing. Not anymore. I closed the door carefully, gently, like she might wake up if I made too much noise. Ryan's bike was still there, still propped against the light pole, where he'd left it. Ryan was next to it. I couldn't look at him. Not directly. My eyes skated away from what was left of his face, from the collapsed ruin of his skull. But I saw enough. I saw the bike visible through where his head used to be. Saw the way his body looked boneless, deflated. I sat down in the parking lot, right there on the cold asphalt, and I laughed, not because anything was funny, just because something had to come out, and laughter was what my body chose. It turned into crying pretty quickly, then back to laughing. Then I couldn't tell which one I was doing anymore. Eventually, I called 911, told them there'd been an accident at County Memorial. They asked what kind of accident, and I said, "You need to come. Please, just come." The cops arrived first, then the ambulances, then more cops. They separated me from the bodies, wrapped me in a foil blanket, asked questions I couldn't answer. What happened? Where were you? What did you see? I told them the truth. All of it. The creature, the wishes, the hospital. They wrote it down with the kind of careful attention people give the clearly insane. By morning, I was in the back of a police car. By afternoon, I was in a psychiatric ward. They were kind. That's what made it worse. Everyone's so gentle, so understanding, asking me about what I'd experienced, nodding when I talked about the creature, taking careful notes. The medications came in little cups, pills that made everything feel distant and manageable. It was a psychotic break. The doctor told me after the first week. Trauma manifesting as hallucination. You survived something terrible, and your mind created a narrative to cope. I learned to agree with him, learned to say the right things, to show the right amount of progress. 3 months of good behavior, of taking the pills, of going group therapy and pretending I believed what they believed. Then they approved an outing, a supervised trip back into the world. "We think you're ready," the doctor said, "ready to reintegrate." I know where I'm going. I know what I'll do. The creature said we all had to wish. Ryan did. Luke did. Casey did. But I never made mine. The creature is still waiting. It has to be. Those are the rules. I'll go back to those woods. I'll find it in the darkness between the trees. And I'll say the words that have been circling in my head for 3 months. The only wish that makes sense now. Maybe it won't work. Maybe the creature is gone. Maybe the rules don't function that way. Maybe I'm just crazy after all, and I'll wander those woods until I die of exposure. But I have to try, because this, right here, breathing and walking and pretending to be alive while they're in the ground, this is the real horror. This is the real price. And tomorrow I'm going to pay it. Story 6. I bought a pair of antique scissors and they cut too well. In full accuracy, the title should say shears, as Elizabeth would insist on correcting me. Apparently, once a pair of scissors reaches a ripe length of 8 inches, it becomes shears. These measure in at 8 1/4. Elizabeth is a collector of vintage scissors. I suppose there's a bit of a world for that, but it's not nearly as structured as some worlds of collection, meaning that there aren't inherently much better types of scissors than others in terms of collectability, and the ability to figure out exactly who the maker or the age of a pair of scissors is mostly a game of vague clues and indefinite endings. I found them in an antique stall at the State Fair of all places. I had no idea that they had stalls like that, but amongst vendors selling art and beef jerky and wind chimes, I found a humble antique seller. The proprietor was a kindly-looking old lady. I say looking because she was honestly kind of rude. I'm an avid explorer when it comes to things like fairs and museums, so I walked in to see what she had to offer. A pile of trinkets here, and a mound of baubles there. I hate to say, but it just felt like a lot of junk. None of this stuff was particularly polished or displayed with any sense of importance. I was happy to abandon my search when a smaller group of items mounted on pegboards caught my attention. I'd assumed these were the better quality items, as they at least seemed to transcend the status of clutter. That's when the scissors caught my eye. I pulled them off the pegboard. A gold foil picture caught my attention too, so I grabbed that and made my purchase with the woman. The scissors, or shears upon measuring them, are old and iron. They're a dark brown hue marked with patches of patina, making some spots closer to orange and others tar black. The shape of the handles is plain, but the blades are fascinating. One is similar to a modern-day scissor blade, but the other is thicker and nearly twice as wide. Based on some quick research, they would appear to be bookbinder scissors designed for cutting through thick paper and leather. The next day, I had placed them in a cardboard box with styrofoam peanuts and was measuring out the gift wrap when something ironic happened. I couldn't find any scissors. I needed to cut the paper, then the ribbon, but I couldn't find a single pair. Not the one that's normally in my desk, nor the kitchen scissors, or even the fabric scissors usually in the craft closest. As I closed the door to the craft closet, I laughed to myself. What a ridiculous issue when I had a solution right here. So I fished them out of the packing peanuts, slid my fingers into the handles, then took them to the paper. This was when I realized that I hadn't actually opened or cut anything with them yet. While Elizabeth doesn't feel that strongly, her preference is that they work passively, so this would double as a test run. Surprisingly, considering their wear, they worked perfectly. They glided seamlessly through the paper then the ribbon. As I sat looking at the cut paper, I decided that I needed to redo it. So I crumpled it up and began again, this time carefully and methodically sliding the scissors through the paper. And I was amazed that even going slowly the blades didn't catch for a moment. I imagined how perfect that edge must be, how immaculately sharp. Ow! I looked down to see red starting to spread into the paper. It radiated from a small nick in my thumb. In my fixation on the scissors, I had stupidly left my thumb at the edge of the paper in its path. It was fine. I just finished the cut and removed any bit that had been stained. There was still more than enough. I placed the box in the center of the paper, and I found myself hesitating. It was time to put the scissors back in the box, but I just didn't want to. Not anymore. I started to think to myself that she has so many that she couldn't possibly be able to actually appreciate any of them individually anymore. Not like I would, as someone who didn't have a collection. And now it seemed I didn't even have my normal ones. So I could only cherish them all the more. Quicker than I would like to admit, I came to a decision, and I wrapped the box and tied the ribbon, with the gold foil picture inside. Happy with the outcome, I took the scissors, and I thought it was no better time to get to the collaging that I had been meaning to get to for weeks. A box under my desk overflowed with magazines taunting me every time I walked past it. It was about time that I faced it. In particular, I was so excited because on a previous antiquing trip, I had found a glamour magazine from the 1950s with a picture of Marilyn Monroe that I was eager to make the centerpiece of my new collage. Soon I was engulfed in a pile of scrap paper, but for a moment, I felt a sort of panic, like I was standing in a snowstorm watching it build up around me, and before long I would be buried alive in it. Snow piling past my mouth, and I'd be choking on the cold before I knew what was happening. I shook it off and continued on my way, savoring and enjoying every snip and cut of paper. The scissors continued to perform perfectly in my hands. And finally I was facing a beautiful background for Marilyn. I had already cut her out in preparation, so the only thing left was to glue her on. I turned to pick her up, but I don't know how or when, but it was ruined. She was in two pieces, split at the neck. I tried to be so careful, but at some point I must have not noticed her sticking to a piece I was intending to cut and accidentally took her with it. I lamented her and felt my stomach drop. I sat with it for a minute before I picked up the tape and made do as best as I could. In the end it looked basically fine, but it felt like a waste of its potential. Then a different disappointment struck me. I realized I didn't have anything else that I needed to cut. I had efficiently moved through my collaging box and didn't have anything else I needed to cut. So, with some melancholy, I put the scissors away in my desk drawer. The next day at work, I had this persistent sense of longing. It didn't take much time to realize that I wanted some excuse to cut papers again. I have a desk job, and one of my tasks is making copies of receipts. I had a small pile of them that I had done this morning, which meant I no longer needed the originals. So, excitedly, I pulled out my desk pair of scissors and then took to cutting them in half, then half again, then taking off corners to try to round them out. But my excitement quickly faded, and I felt ridiculous. I set aside the scissors and threw away the scraps of the receipts, and went back to my work feeling honestly childish. I have a coworker. Her name is Emily. Emily is sort of a hippie type. Vegan, very organic, nature-focused. She's a kind person overall. And after a talk with HR last year where it was requested that she switch off from natural deodorants, she's always been a super easy person to get along with. The other thing to know about Emily is her hair is long. Very, very long. Usually at work. She lets it hang all the way down to her, but however, today was different. Today she had spent the time to braid all of its incredible length. My eyes were transfixed by it. Following it around whenever she would pass my desk or go down the hall I could see from my chair. I would catch myself staring and go back to my work, but I'd suddenly become aware that I hadn't actually done any work on my computer, and that minutes had gone by without me even realizing. At one point I came to my computer and realized I was staring at the lock screen screensaver. That meant I hadn't touched a key or even moved the mouse for at least 15 minutes. And if you had asked me, I would have said no time had passed at all. I decided to get up and walk to the water cooler to clear my head. Lo and behold who got to the water cooler just a moment before me. She turned and apologized. As she turned back to fill her bottle, that braid whipped in front of my eyes. I don't remember catching it in my hand. And I absolutely don't remember even putting that pair of scissors in my work bag. But now somehow the braid was in one hand and the scissors were in the other. I will admit that I was fully aware as I opened them, then moved them to gently caress her on either side of the braid. Then with their oily, smooth action, I squeezed those two blades together. 3 feet of hair fell to the ground. It even bounced just a touch. It felt luxurious. For a moment, I was lost in euphoria. Suddenly, everything looked right. She looked right. No strange, long, ugly hair. Now everything was correct. But as I came back to myself and saw her eyes full of horror and anger and the tears welling in them, I was only too present. I was fired, packed at my desk, and was home within the hour. Strangely, I remembered packing that box close to the top with 4 years of accumulated bits and things. But when I set it down on my kitchen table, I realized how incredibly light it was. When I opened it up, there was only one item inside. I'm not a fool. I can see that there's something wrong with these scissors, that they're in some way pushing me to use them, and they seem to have a nature to them that is scaring me. The problem is I want to throw them away, but now I'm home without a job or anything to focus my energy on. Fortunately, I have enough money that I'm not in dire straits if it takes a few weeks to get back to work. So I found myself with an excess of time. Time, unfortunately, has only provided fuel for this fire. As one day has folded into another, I found my fingers entangled in the handle of the scissors more and more often. On day one, I ran out of legitimate reasons to be using them. Everything that needed to be cut has been, and since I've sort of just been sifting through papers that are lying around that I don't need. Mostly what calls to me is that they often have such obnoxious corners, jutting and inorganic, and I find that cutting through them makes the pictures themselves feel so much more correct. I suppose that's the word. Most of the time this correcting leads to a lovelier result. There have been a handful of times where I found myself providing correction after correction, and before I realized that the picture or paper was rendered to nothing but confetti on the floor, I took them to cook. I got myself some carrots, celery, and onions to make a mirepoix, and then maybe use that for soup or something else. I know cooking shears are not uncommon, especially in some cultures more than others, but I will guess that rarely are bookbinding scissors used, nor are they used as universally as I used them. They worked perfectly and everything was vanquished by them easily. As I cut the carrots, a thought did cross my mind. Years ago, I remember being told that chopping carrots was similar in difficulty as cutting fingers. As someone with a fair amount of cooking experience, including taking apart animal parts, I guess carrots would actually be harder. After I made myself an excessive soup, I found myself lacking for things to consume with my new obsession. I decided that the best thing to do would be to make my way to the hardware store, so I could get my scissors and I knew things to devour. Soon I had collected long, delicious wooden dowels, and was bundling up lengths of rope that I knew would give me so many amazing cuts before it was too short to offer any satisfaction. The problem was as I was making my way to the checkout counter, I made the mistake of walking through the lamp section, As I was passing through that little tunnel of wonderful light, the long black cords caught my eyes. The ones that were plugged in had their cord behind them tucked away to reach the outlets, but the ones that were on display had them hanging long and thin. I stood there, moments turning into minutes. I didn't even have to take my eyes off them when I realized there was a familiar weight in my hands. At this point, I couldn't even find myself to be surprised. I fear I was already well down a path that I didn't understand, and finding I had subconsciously brought them into the store wasn't all that surprising at the moment. There was one aspect that caught my attention, though. I could feel the metal of the handle, and it felt cold. At this point, I had been here long enough for them to have warmed up to my touch if they were always in my hand, or even if they were in my pocket. But even that unexpected element only delayed me a few seconds before I took the cord in hand and slid that metal mouth around them. And with a satisfying bite, the cord fell to ground. It felt incredible. I worried for a moment that I may even be drooling. I took another cord in hand when I heard a sound to my left. I think it may not have been the first. "Hey!" I said, "Don't touch that." I looked over with glossy eyes and just watched without really processing anything until a rush of adrenaline came over me and I realized a security guard was running toward me. That was enough to wake me back up, and I was running to now in the opposite direction. I cleared that aisle and glanced back to see him still approaching. I scanned over the store to plan my escape. It wasn't long before I burst into the parking lot, moving at a full sprint, and made my way to my car. Before long, I was back home. However, I had been forced to abandon my supplies during my escape. I came back into the house, with panic admittedly growing in my heart. The panic wasn't about the security. It had far more to do with the fact that in that moment, I had felt that cutting that cord was such a normal, reasonable thing to do. It made perfect sense to me. I knew that me and the scissors would like it. And the scissors... I'm not sure why I said that. I meant that I did it because I thought I'd enjoy it, and that's all it took. As I panicked, the first thing that came to mind was that I should cut some things, and that would make me feel better, realizing the self-defeating logic that I just thought. I began to pace around trying to figure something out, figure a way out of it. I couldn't think of anything, and every time I looked around my room, I realized all the amazing things that could be cut. Eclectic cords, family photos, art prints, and nearly anything else I could fit those blades around. My anxiety soared, so I went to the bathroom and began splashing water on my face. The water was cool and shocking my body. I felt my heart rate lower and thoughts begin to slow, and I looked up to face myself in the mirror. That's when I noticed how much ears stick out. They're so strange. The head is so smooth and consistent, except for those weirdly shaped protrusions of soft flesh. They just look so odd all of a sudden, so unnatural. I considered that maybe it was just my ears. But no, I think all human ears are just strange and irregular, but perhaps mine more so than others. I will confess, it did cross my mind how that soft flesh would feel as the scissors bit through them. But that's not why I would do it. I would do it because it only made sense. It would return my head to a much more normal, much more right shape. But a part of me was ready to savor the feeling as they glided gracefully through me. The blade sat above and below the base of my ear. I began to squeeze slowly because I reasoned that they were so soft it was likely they would go through so quickly I wouldn't get a chance to savor it. I can't lie about the smile that was pushing across my face as I watched the metal come closer and closer, then press into my skin. Thank God for that masochistic desire to prolong the sensation, because as soon as they cut into my flesh and a bead of red ran down my face, I snapped out of it. I threw the scissors away from me. They bounced off the wall and clattered into the bathtub. I cupped my ear as pain shot through my head deep into my skull. What was I doing? I rolled up a wad of toilet paper in my hand and pressed it against the cuts on the top and bottom of my ear. Fortunately, they weren't deep, just enough to draw a little blood and send jolts of pain through me. A new fear washed over me. Maybe for the first time, I was feeling the proper amount of fear that I should be. I stared at those scissors in the tub, specks of blood around them, and I was hit with the overwhelming sense that they wanted more, that they had just gotten a taste, and now they wanted a lot more. I wasn't sure what to do. I thought, Maybe it was best to use the pain, as long as it was with me, to make my move. I bent over and reached out to pick them up, but then pulled away. I decided better than to touch them directly. I pulled my towel off the wall and threw it on top, then bundled it around them, like how you might use a tissue to pick up a bug. I took the swaddle pile and quickly ran outside and threw it into the trash bin. Trash day is only a couple days away, and when I wake up that morning they will be gone. I came back inside and sat down at my computer to type this all out. I thought I should document to myself what has happened these past days, before my mind has a chance to cast a fog of doubt and reconstruct things to feel more normal. Now I wait until the garbage truck arrives and takes them away. I plan to stay inside and stay away from the front windows where I might be able to see the trash can. I know that they possess some sort of effects, and whether that's enough to bring themselves back on their own or if they need me, I'm not sure. But I plan to not give them a chance to use me. Now I hope and wait, hoping too that they may not find another person to manipulate. Story 7. My dad's new hobby is building birdhouses. They're perfect 1/12 scale replicas of the rooms in our house. I'm home from college for the summer. It's the first time in a year I've been back in the house I grew up in, and everything is different. Not in a big, obvious way. It's the small things, the quiet, the strange, new rhythm of the house. And it all revolves around my dad's new hobby. My father, for as long as I can remember, has been a quiet, unremarkable man. Not in a bad way. He's a good man, a kind man. He worked a steady, boring job in insurance. His passions were small and manageable. Crossword puzzles, historical documentaries, and a mild, inoffensive love for gardening. He was a background character in his own life, a gentle, stable presence, the kind of dad you could always rely on to be exactly the same, day in and day out. But the man I came home to is different. He retired a few months ago, and he's found a calling. He builds birdhouses, and he is a master at it. He's converted the entire garage into a workshop. It's a wonderland of tiny tools, lathes, and stacks of fragrant, exotic wood. It smells of cedar and sawdust and varnish. He's out there from sunrise to long after sunset, a constant low hum of sanding and sawing emanating from the garage. And the things he's making are breathtaking. They're not just birdhouses. They're miniature architectural marvels. Tiny, intricate structures with hand-carved shingles, detailed window frames, and perfect, minuscule doorknobs made from polished pins. My mom is thrilled. I've never seen him so happy, she told me the day I got home, her voice full of warm, relieved pride. He has a purpose now. It's given him a whole new lease on life. And he did seem happier. The quiet, reserved man I knew was gone, replaced by someone with a spark in his eye, a creative fire. He'd bring his latest creation to the dinner table to show us. His hands, usually so soft and clean from a life behind a desk, now covered in sawdust and small, satisfying nicks. He'd point out the tiny, perfect details, the way he'd managed to replicate the wood grain on a miniature door, his voice full of an artist's quiet passion. He's hung them all over the backyard. There must be at least a dozen of them now, perched on posts, nestled in the branches of our old oak tree. They're beautiful, a tiny, silent village in our garden. There's only one strange thing. In the entire month I've been home, I have never once seen a bird go near them. Not a single sparrow, not a curious finch. They are perfect, beautiful, and utterly, completely empty. It was last week when the first thread of real, deep unease began to unravel in my mind. I was helping in the yard, and I took a closer look at his newest creation, one he was about to hang from the porch eaves. "This one is incredible, Dad," I said, admiring the intricate detail. The wallpaper inside, visible through the tiny, paned window, was a familiar, faded floral pattern. The small, wooden floorboards were a perfect match for the ones in our own house. A strange, cold feeling of deja vu washed over me. "This looks familiar," I said slowly. He smiled a proud, distant smile. "It should. It's the sunroom." I stared at the birdhouse. He was right. It was our sunroom, a perfect 1/12 scale replica. I peered through the tiny window. There was a miniature, hand-carved armchair in the corner, identical to the one my mom always sits in to read. There was a tiny, perfect stack of books on a small table beside it. My heart started to beat a little faster. I walked around the yard, looking at the other birdhouses with new, horrified eyes. They weren't just birdhouses. They were us. There was one that was a perfect replica of my childhood bedroom, complete with the faded, peeling space posters I'd had on the wall, and a tiny, meticulously crafted model of my old desk. There was the kitchen, so detailed it even had a miniature spice rack on the wall. The tiny labels on the jars, just an illegible, painterly suggestion. There was one in the living room, a tiny, perfect replica of our sagging family sofa, sitting in the center. It was my entire house, our entire life, recreated in miniature and hung from the trees like strange, ornamental fruit. "Dad," I said later that evening, try and keep my voice light casual, "the birdhouses, they're our house. Why did you do that?" He looked up from a newspaper, a slightly confused, placid expression on his face. "Well, it's a good house," he said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "It's a good design, sturdy, worthy of replication." And then he went back to his crossword puzzle, leaving me with a cold, hollow feeling in my stomach. That night, I was woken up by a sound, a faint, rhythmic, tapping sound. Tick, tick, tick. I lay in bed, my ears straining in the darkness. It was coming from outside, from the backyard. I slid out of bed and crept to my window, which overlooks the yard. My father was out there. He was standing on the lawn, bathed in the pale blue glow of the moonlight. He was standing directly under one of the birdhouses, the one that was a perfect, tiny replica of my own bedroom. And he was holding a long, thin, silver needle. He was reaching up, his hand steady, and he was gently, rhythmically, tapping the needle against the tiny window of the miniature room. Tick, tick, tick. He was completely transfixed, a strange, vacant, serene smile on his face. It was a smile of a watchmaker, a loving God, tending to a delicate and complex mechanism that only he understood. I stumbled back from the window, my blood running cold. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I started to watch him, and I started to notice things. Small, impossible coincidences. A few days later, my mom was complaining about a picture frame in the living room that had been hanging slightly crooked for years, something none of us had ever gotten around to fixing. That afternoon, I saw my dad out in the yard, hunched over the living room birdhouse, carefully adjusting a tiny sliver of wood picture frame on the miniature wall with a pair of tweezers. The next morning, I came downstairs, and the real picture frame in our living room was hanging perfectly straight. Another time, we had a stubborn wine stain on the kitchen counter that my mom had been scrubbing at for a week. I saw my dad in his workshop, meticulously sanding and restaining the tiny countertop of the kitchen replica. The next day, the real stain was gone. Not faded, gone, as if it had never been there. He hadn't just cleaned the model. He had erased a flaw from reality. He was editing, curating. He was maintaining the model. And in doing so, he was maintaining the real house. He was the groundskeeper of our reality. I had to confront him. This was beyond a strange hobby. I didn't have a word for what this was. I found him in the garage, hunched over his workbench, putting the finishing touches on a new birdhouse, the master bedroom. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "about the birdhouses, about what you're doing." He looked up, a placid, slightly confused smile on his face. "What about them? Did you see the new one? I finally got the grain on the bed frame just right." "Dad!" "Stop," I said, my voice rising with frantic energy. You're changing things. In the real house, the picture frame, the stain on the counter, you're doing it through the models, How are you doing that? His smile faded, replaced by a look of genuine, hurt confusion. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice defensive. I'm just keeping the house tidy, making sure everything is where it should be. A man has to take care of his home, keep things in order. He turned back to his work, a clear dismissal. He didn't understand, or he didn't want to. That brings me to last night. The end of summer is approaching. I have to go back to college next week. I spent the day packing, a growing sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. Every time I put something in my suitcase, I felt a strange, almost physical resistance, like the house itself didn't want me to. I was in my room, trying to close my largest suitcase. It was full, but it should have closed. I pushed on it. I sat on it. The latches just wouldn't click. It was as if the two halves were being held apart by an invisible force. Frustrated, I gave up and went to look for my car keys to make sure I had everything ready for the morning. They were gone. I always leave them in the small ceramic bowl by the front door. They weren't there. I tore the house apart. I searched every room, every pocket, every drawer. They had simply vanished. A cold, sick feeling washed over me. I went to my bedroom window, the one that overlooks the yard, and I saw him. My father was out there in the deepening dusk. He was standing under the birdhouse that was my bedroom. There was a frantic, desperate energy to his movements. He was working on it, his hands a blur of motion. I grabbed my binoculars from my desk. I focused in on the tiny replica of my room, and my blood turned to ice. He was using a pair of tweezers to carefully, meticulously glue a tiny, human-shaped figure into the center of the miniature room. A figure that was wearing a tiny, perfect replica of a t-shirt I had on at that very moment. And in his other hand, he held a tiny, perfect, silver replica of my car keys. He was trying to glue them to the tiny desk inside the room. I ran downstairs. He was in the kitchen, calmly wiping down the counters. "Dad," I said, my voice a choked whisper. "Where are my car keys?" He didn't look at me. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice a soft, placid monotone. "This is your home. You belong here. We all do. We have to keep the family together. It's better this way. It's safer." Safer from what? I screamed, the last of my composure shattering. He finally turned to look at me. The loving, gentle man I knew was gone. In his place was a stranger, a serene, smiling custodian with eyes that were as calm and as empty as a perfectly maintained room. "From change," he whispered. "I'm writing this now from my bedroom. The door is locked, though I know that a pathetic, useless gesture. I can hear him from the garage, the faint, familiar sound of him working, the soft rasp of sandpaper on wood. He's making something new. I'm a prisoner, a doll in a dollhouse that I can never leave, with my own father as a gentle, loving, and utterly insane warden. He doesn't see the bars of the cage he's building. He only sees the beauty of its design. I can see him now. He's brought the birdhouse, my room, down from the branch. It's sitting on the picnic table, and he's hunched over it, working with frantic, focused intensity under the single yellow glow of the porch light. He's not sanding or painting. He's sculpting. He has a block of some dark, clay-like substance, and he's shaping it with his delicate tools. His hands are moving with a speed and precision I've never seen before, a blur of creation. The shape he's making is wrong. It's a chaotic mass of limbs, tentacles. They're coiling and twisting around each other, reaching upwards. It's a grotesque, but somehow beautiful, intricate sculpture of some kind of cephalopodic nightmare. He picks up the finished sculpture. It's large, almost as big as the miniature room itself, and he carefully, reverently, mounts at the roof of the birdhouse, to the roof of my bedroom. He steps back to admire his work, that same serene, vacant smile on his face. And as he does, a shadow falls over my real room. I look up at my ceiling. It's no longer a flat, white expanse. A dark, shifting, multi-limbed shadow is projected there, cast from a light that doesn't exist. It's moving. The tentacles are slowly, silently, writhing. My father doesn't just want me to stay. He wants me to be perfect. And now, its definition of perfect includes a new guardian for my room. The soft rasp of sandpaper from the garage is gone. It's been replaced by a new sound, a sound coming from my own ceiling. A faint, wet, slithering sound. Story 8. Humming a tune. Her tune graces my soul once more. I could listen to her symphony for eternity. The harmony of her hums are graceful. Her composition of the finest sounds is a privilege I often forget to appreciate. A talented composer that chose to share her pieces with me. On a soothing, snowy evening as such, I am gifted by God the chance to hold a songbird that entranced my ears. I will never let go. You look quite divine tonight, my darling, I whisper into her ears. She grins and lays her cheek against mine. My heart begins to slow, relaxed in her presence. I could stay here forever on this sofa, holding the light of my life. She has said little tonight, but from her glow to her scent, I am in paradise. She whispers back, I love you so, and I regret every moment I am not with you. I promise I will spend every day making it right, my love. My smile deepens with love. I truly am blessed to live such an adoring life. For every instant I suffered, hidden in my hole, she would come around the corner to embrace me. I've yet to care for the life I had before her, of desperation, procrastination, and haste. To fear judgment of my reputation, my career, my shining accomplishments. All my friends and family had held contempt for my being. I could see it in their eyes. Never a word spoken, but always presented. No such man holds a flat scowl toward someone they respect. I could never accuse them of such. They tell lies of care and love for me, always withholding their selfish thoughts. Children of God born of one emotion. An open mind would sense I am living in the wind, simply enjoying the delights that surround us. It's natural to envy those that live life as a fairy tale. Never my beloved darling. Not a flash of envy, pride, or disillusion with me. Always that same beautiful grin, withholding her love behind it. I had dreamed of finding such love since I could walk. Never an astronaut, a doctor, or a lawyer. Just a dumb fool enamored with his turtle dove. When my superiors removed me, I felt lost once more. My roommate worried whether I could pay rent, or with my father questioning my drive. In angst and desperation, she came around anew. I understood she would be busy, filled with duties that I feared to question. With a drop of a hat, she would hold me in her warmth. You will find another home soon, my love. You are protected in my embrace. My heart slows furthermore. My lungs fill slowly with the air I share with her. I cuddle her tightly, despite my numb limbs. You are everything I had begged from God. A post I can lean on when I am troubled. A tree I can sleep peacefully under. I softly spoke. She leans in to kiss my blue lips. The warmth of our lips sharing brings my body the peace it needs, the space it needs to breathe and bleed so comfortably. She leans back and stares with her eyes, one resembling the smooth seas nearby and the other of warm coffee. Her soul glimmers in front of me, calming my spirits once more. I go to touch her cheek, lay my fingers upon her cheekbone. The heat of her visage embraces my cold, freezing fingers. I cannot feel any more than a cold winter's night. Yet her cozy figure contradicts that. I love you so, and I promise I will make it right, my love. I blink, and my eyes fail to adjust. My bed now warm of love and satisfaction. I gaze at the spirited soul resting beside me. A thick comforter, a warm scent, and a soft tune whistling on my record player. A sight to behold, my heart grows tight. I must be feeling ecstatic love and joy for it to overwhelm my chest as such. Despite the pain, I move closer to my darling. The movement required to scale a few inches across this mattress is near to climbing Mount Everest. Yet once I found the strength to lay my arms around her and hold her tight, I felt right once more. The pain lingered, yet I cared no longer. I know she heard me, felt me staging music murder to be where I am. She grabs my limbs and wraps them further around her. You must hold me tighter than that. Show me you care, my love. I wanted to respond, but I couldn't. My arms are frail, with little room to give. My tongue now numb, can't expel the poetry I desire. She giggles and faces me. I know, my love, I can hear you. We're alone at the edge of a universe, humming a tune. Her grin burns deeply into my heart and brings temporary remedy to what was the equivalent of an elephant sitting on my chest. I love you, my darling. In our garden of imagination, we frolic, we gaze, and we slept. Through every hardship, judgment, and anguish we endured, we will always have one another. She smiles wider than before, more than I had ever seen. Your success and failures may have been yours, but mine a burden. You are mine here, in the next universe, as well as the next life. We are never meant to part. I love you so much. I can't spit these words out. The sounds of gurgles and chokes resemble my tune. Her smile grows evermore. She is aware of my adoration. I can no longer move. I can't feel the warmth of the room nor revolt against these limitations. I am akin to a statue. She moves me, lays me on my back, facing the ceiling. She places a soft kiss on my left cheek. Yet I cry, for I cannot feel its warmth. My darling gazes at me. It's now and never here, a reverie endeavor. She points to the ceiling. It peels away to show the beautiful night sky. Despite what would have been several floors above my room, is now the aurora borealis, an ecstatic display of colors, shining across my gaze from green, purple, as well as hints of red. I am witnessing heaven. Her mismatched eyes of the sea and chocolate gaze upon me. In euphoric scenes such as this, I am inclined to take my naloxone. Such beauty can be deadly. She holds a bottle of security and lightly tosses it across the room. Believe me, my love, the stars are made for falling, like melting obelisks as tall as another realm. The last sensation I have within my grasp is now amiss. I can no longer breathe. The necessity of inhale to exhale is gone, and I feel quite peaceful. She holds me tightly, her left arm across my chest, and she whispers, "So long, so far, until it's time." My vision begins to falter. I can no longer see before me. It flashes of several colors, including those I had never witnessed. No longer am I restricted with limbs, floating through this epileptic void. I had never felt so free, soaring like a bird through this unrestricted space. The colors flash around me, resembling my emotions across, forming different shapes, hearts for her, or narrow triangles that I can barely glide through, as well as drooping curves I can grind across. Within a blink, I am back in my room. No night sky, no music, no sign of her. I try to move, smell, even breathe. No response. It's jarring to feel no signs of effort cross my figure. I want to scream, I want to run, cry, do whatever that makes me feel better. In times like this, she will hold me still. What a lovely idea. What a beautiful thought. I thought to myself in prayer, "My darling, please, I believe you. Help me in my time of need." In doing so, I steadily rose. Though the feeling of movement pleases me, I notice I am rising out of my frame. I may have awoken from my paralysis. However, I am left separate. I stand upright next to my bed and witness the naloxone on the ground. I saw a discolored hand that had tried to claw for it. My gaze follows the paper skin and blisters up the limb, and stare at what once was. The face discolored as well, with blue lips, clammy skin, and pinpoint pupils. A bloated mass with stiff muscles and fluids across the bed. Overgrown nails and peeling on the face. Dark liquid pouring out the nose and mouth. I can't imagine the scent. A familiar landscape that I get to witness without a mirror. I want to feel fear, to feel anxiety, and even shock at what lies before me. Yet I feel peaceful. I walk around the room. completely lightweight. It is quite sensational. I attempt to see my form in the mirror, yet there is little to be had. I feel strong, quick, healthy, yet there is no visual to accompany that. I go to grab the knob of my bedroom door, but to no avail. I cannot see my hand desperately attempt to grab it, yet I can feel the sensation of such a curious feeling. I decided to try walking to the door itself. It's out of the ordinary to see oneself in an outside perspective. It's another to waltz through objects seamlessly. My apartment is quite empty. Scatters of trash and leftover food I had forgotten to put away. Roaches crawl across. Flies hover what's left, and a mountain of dishes. I see little signs of activity across my humble abode. I have little recollection of the previous night, and I would assume she would have tidied up the house before leaving. I am all alone here. In what should be my place of safety and security, I am starting to feel panicked. I am alone. No one is here. I can't be in solitude. It's puzzling that she left me here. My roommate is nowhere to be found, and the one being in all the universe that I adore is missing. Every time I needed to see her, she appeared. Darling, I have arisen. Come see me, my heart. No one came. I dashed around lightly across the apartment. Every room, nook and cranny. Yet her caramel mane and mismatched gaze cannot be found. Within this decade, I found peace and comfort in every terrible event that I came across. Through her and her alone. When my mother had passed, when my dog had ran, or when my friends had left, she was there, standing by around every corner, ready to embrace me. I love this woman. I love her so much. She couldn't have abandoned me. She always says goodbye. Come home, my love, please. Oh, my darling, please. I cannot live without you. I beg you to be by my side. I cannot count the time that went by. I had laid here on my sofa for what feels like eons now. I have cried for eternity. Tears that could drown the thirsty. Sorrow that could dampen the optimist, yet nothing has changed. Countless people have come and gone through my nest, different ages and different strokes. The sofa changed 1,000 times, but always in the same spot. I have yet to discover why I cannot leave my apartment. The door is physical against me, yet I can walk through the inner walls of the apartment. If this wretched prison had released me, I would run thousands of miles across this realm to find her again. I couldn't say what I would do, whether I would hug her tightly or scream in frustration like a child. Her beautiful smile shines through my mind. I would give anything to see it again. I begin to hum softly to the same tune she had sung 1,000 times before, the only tune that has kept me sane all this time. A siren sounds like the goddess, who promises endless apologies of paradise, and only she can make it right. So things are different tonight. Story 9. The love of my life ordered a husband online. He's not human. It was Crow's greatest night. Crow watched us in the dark outside the campfire, learning, crafting, practicing for his greatest performance, his wedding ceremony. Crow was Michelle's fiancé after all, and he would make it clear she belonged to him. I thought it would be the best night of my life. The campfire lit Michelle, the best girl in the world, her freckled face flushed full of smiles, jokes she held back, and I hoped, feeling she held back. The rest of our friends found something else to do around the cabin. which was pretty messed up. She's the one who paid for this pre-wedding getaway, and we're all supposed to be here to celebrate her. However, she was never the best at picking good friends or boyfriends, which is part of the reason we're even here now. So this is a little awkward, Michelle said in a lull between laughs and toyed with her glasses. I suppose this is why you don't invite your ex to a joint bachelor and bachelorette party. I smirked, caught off guard. Her glasses slipped from her hand and fumbled toward the fire. I dashed forward, saving them. The heat of the fire stoked the back of my hand as I waited on one knee for her to accept them from me. Her hand wavered above the glasses. The whole thing felt taboo. Her ex-boyfriend on one knee for her just past midnight beside a healthy fire. Still nervous, still delicate, Michelle took them from my hand, clasping my hand and lingering there. Michelle always had the opposite effect on me that I had on her. With Shell, I'm confident. With Shell, I can do whatever I want. I jumped behind her. Sneaking out of the shadows of his cabin was her fiancé. We made eye contact before he slumped away, like a supervillain. What? Michelle asked, noticing my face. Is he out here? Did he see? She spun around. Yeah, I said. I'm sorry. I should go. I had my suspicions of Crow, but this wasn't right. A week before their marriage, what was I thinking? I avoided eye contact as I walked away from her back to my room. No, Adrian, she said. Stay. It was her party, after all. Who was I to ever say no? I could never say no to her. Well, ever since we broke up. In the relationship was another story. I looked for Crow creeping in the shadows as he liked to do, but he hid well. Shadows, corners, and beside doors. Crow always found a way to stay back and observe. I know what she saw in him, and it wasn't good. She didn't chase love. Michelle wanted someone to shy to leave her. I didn't go back to my seat across from her. I sat in the chair beside her. Yes. Well, Crow thought it was a good idea, Shell said, not scooting away from me but getting comfortable. Our thighs touched, since we grew up together as best friends and all. Does he know? No, he doesn't know why we broke up. I just told him we had mutual differences. Michelle smiled, and I saw the mischievous kid she once was flash on her face. Never around her parents, never around school, only around me. You're not scared of him, are you? She asked with a wicked smile. Why would I be scared of him? I asked. He's bigger than you. We both let the innuendo sit, and he has a massive D. Michelle, dude, stop, no. I scooted away. She slid closer. What? Why does it surprise you? He's so tall. No, I'm just surprised you let him make decisions. Considering I let that sit. Yes, we are getting married. Of course he can make decisions. But I should have finished. I should have called it what it was. A sham of a marriage that she was too good for. She met this guy online through a sketchy dating service. And he barely spoke English. Essentially, he was a mail-order husband. I would do anything for her to marry me. But even if it wasn't me, she should find someone to love her. I said none of that because I wanted to see her smile. So I said, do you still believe in aliens? I got my wish. Michelle beamed and hooked my arm into hers. Yes, 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 so much. Yes. I got one book on it that relates our folklore to modern alien sightings. It's called They've Always Been With Us. A friend gave it to me. Her husband wrote it. Oh, which friend? I asked, did she come to cabin? No. She's been really busy with her husband recently. She paused like something wasn't right. But anyway, the book is based on interviews from those who've been abducted. They very well could be describing what we thought was just folklore, like banshees, vampires, and changelings. Michelle placed her head on my shoulder, maybe platonic, maybe more. Flames shone on half her face and her orange hair. The rest was covered in shadow. Can I tell you something? She asked. You just can't tell anybody else. They'll think I'm a freak. Yeah. I nuzzled my head on top of hers. We watched the sticks fall in the fire as she told me a secret. So this book, she said, it had the theory that certain spells were really codes to bring the aliens down here. Like an all clear, like you can come to this place. Almost how you'd signal a plane come down. So summoning demons or whatever witches and warlocks did was really summoning aliens, like telling them where there was a safe space to land. Okay, that's interesting. Here's the part that's going to scare you. I found one for changelings, and I did it. She sat up and smiled. So Crow, he's a changeling. Her smile stopped, and she folded her arms. No, what? EW, no. I tried to summon one, and nothing happened. Wait, no. What's the punchline then? Why tell the story without a punchline? Because it's embarrassing and supposed to be funny, and you're supposed to laugh. Yeah, huh? I said sarcastically, but it did work. I knew there was something strange about him. How can you even afford a mail-order husband? You're not rich. It's an arranged marriage, and that's very mean and... I cut her off. Time was running out. The wedding was a week away, now or never. There's certain opportunities here in the U.S. I quoted the phrase I heard from Crow verbatim. Yeah, I've heard him say it. I want you to think, though, Jace and I were talking about this earlier. Oh, Jace. Shell's eyes rolled. Until then, she had never had a problem with Jace. He was another childhood friend. She knew him better than Crow, and he was definitely a better guy than half of the people on the trip. Half of the guests on this trip treated me like trash. I didn't know what was going on in her head, but I pressed on. Yes, Jace and I were talking. He's weird, Shell. I need you to think and put it together. Nothing makes sense about him. My heart raced. I saw the gears turning in her head. Michelle knew I had a point. Then he came. Crow's hand landed on my shoulder, a hand so large his fingers pressed into veins of my neck and pushed down my shoulder. I didn't look up at him. Being next to him was like being next to a bear. There's a possible finality with every encounter. Crow stretched out to be 7 feet tall, blocking out the moon with his height, and Crow was massive enough to fill every doorframe he entered, his shadow covering me, Michelle, and the fire. But you know the strangest part about him? He looks a lot like me. Not the impressive physical features, but color, hair, olive skin tone, chubby cheeks, and slight overbite. Of course, I couldn't say that to anyone. What would I say? This 7-foot-tall giant looks a lot like me except for all the interesting parts. Allo, Adrian? Can I sit? He said. Yeah, of course, I said and scooted over. He plopped on the log, breaking some part and pushing me off. I moved to another seat. The two lovers snuggled. I stayed long enough to be polite, and then I got up to leave. No, stay, Crow said. Keep Michelle company. I beg you. I'm going to bed early. He leaned over to kiss Michelle. Good night, babe. Good night, she said and turned her cheek to him. Caught off guard. He planted one on her cheek instead of her lips. I watched him leave. Creepy Crow didn't go back to his cabin. He went to the woods. Oh, look, he's going back home. I joked. You should go. This isn't appropriate. Hey, he asked me to stay. It's fine. I can be alone. It doesn't look like it. I said, only feeling the weight of my words after the hurt smacked across Michelle's face. Michelle, no. I'm sorry. It was a joke. I'm joking. He's fine. Michelle ignored me and headed to her cabin. Michelle, come on. I'm sorry. Shell? Shell. I stayed by the fire alone and thinking that in a way, this really was all my fault and that guilt might eat me alive. Perhaps half an hour deep into contemplation, I heard music come from the woods. I followed the sound into the woods, my footsteps crunching over dead leaves and snapping twigs that sounded too loud in my ears. But eventually even that died, drowned by a fiddle. Wild, frantic fiddle notes spiraled through the trees like they were being chased. Whistles darted after them, high and sharp, and then thudded a drum pounding with a rhythm that felt wrong, like a 3-legged elephant. My heart matched it, racing loud in my ears. After much researching after the fact, I found a song. They sang it is called The Stolen Child, where dips the rocky highland. Of sleuth wood in the lake, there lies a leafy island, where flapping herons wake, the drowsy water rats, their weave at our fairy vats, full of berries, and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy, hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. I pushed past a final curtain of branches and froze. My breath caught in my throat. There In a clearing lit by moonlight and something green and pulsing from the earth itself, Crow danced. Not the wobbling, toe-to-heel walk he did around the cabin. This was fluid, expert, his massive frame spinning, and leaping like a ballerina. And he wasn't alone. They moved with him. Things that might have been human once, or tried to be. Their heads were too thick, swollen like overripe fruit ready to burst, and their eyes either bulged in their sockets or stared unblinking, refusing to close. Skin hung on them in folds and creases, like old paper left too long in the sun. Their bodies bent wrong. Backs curved into humps that made them list to one side, arms and legs thin as kindling that shouldn't support their weight. Some had bellies that swelled and sagged, tight and distended. All of them had that same sickly pallor, a yellowish white like spoiled milk. They danced around Crow in a circle, and Crow danced with them, and the music played on. I realized with a sick feeling in my gut that Crow was teaching them how to move, how to be human. And they sang the second verse. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy, hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than he can understand. I ran back to the cabins, bursting inside to the smell of weed and the blare of beeps coming from a switch. Byron, the best gamer of the group, seemed to be playing terribly at his game. His eyes bulged like I was some cop, and he tossed his blunt aside. I practically leapt to him. I need you. Haha. Dude, I thought you'd never ask. Not like that. Come to the woods with me now. There's something you need to see. Byron sighed for a long time. He snuggled himself in his blanket as he sat on the edge of the bed. His switch flashed the words, "Game over," again and again. Byron picked up the game again and ready to start again. Nah, I'm good here. This is an emergency. It's about Michelle. We have to save her. Nah, sorry, dude. My legs hurt. Please, I said. You're just high and lazy. Come on. I grabbed at the blanket and pulled. Byron tossed his precious switch and pulled back. It clattered to the floor, likely broken. Byron didn't seem to care. Dude, I'm staying here. What's your problem? I braced myself, pulling with all I had. I don't want to exaggerate, but her life could be in danger. Either you or Jace have to do it. Where's Jace? He left, man. I don't know. Byron didn't look at me, his focus on the blanket. He left. I yelled, "You're telling me Jace left after buying a plane ticket?" I laughed. Jace, who completed the survey on the back of receipts for free food. Jace, who pirated everything. Jace, who refused to buy a laptop because you can use Microsoft Word from your phone. That Jace paid to get a new flight home? Frustrated, I pulled the blanket with all my might, bringing Byron to the floor. He got up quickly, staggered and wobbled. Byron stumbled backward, arms flailing but didn't fall. He wobbled to the left, hands in the air like an inflatable outside of a car sales lot. Then to the right, then forward, then backward. Crunch. Something broke. Byron stood in front of me, his feet twisted inward so his toes touched. It looked horrific. My skin crawled. My brain lapsed. How could one push through that? Byron, sorry. I cut myself off. Byron didn't look in pain, just annoyed. I can never get the feet right once I start and am moving, he said with a stutter he never had before. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Byron flicked his tongue as if it was glued to his mouth, and he was trying to free it. And then my speech messes up. Byron, I asked, are we? Byron hacked twice. Are we still doing this? We can't be honest? Do I sound like Byron? Can't you tell I'm something else? The voice that came out did not belong to Byron. The accent belonged to someone in Northern Europe and was full of bitterness. I ran back to the fire. It was dying and the world felt colder. Michelle had come back. Alone. Hey, Adrian, she said. Sorry, I ran off. I was just feeling. Michelle, enough. You're in danger and we're leaving. Adrian. Michelle, now. She got up to run from me as if I was the problem. I'm not going anywhere with you. Think again, Michelle. Think honestly to yourself. What happened to Jace? I chased after her. She ignored me, but I got her eventually. I grabbed her wrist. Where's Jace? I made Crow kick him out because he was the same prick he always was. He just came up here to try to have sex with me, but I don't have to deal with that anymore. I didn't know that, but still, think. How did you afford Crow? I asked again. I saved Adrian. I saved because I want somebody who won't leave me. I won't leave you, Michelle. I love you. Then why didn't you stay when you had the chance? When we were together, why did you cheat on me? That part always hurts retelling it, because that's when I realized it was my fault. All my fault. I let her wrist go. I can love you now. The words croaked out like I was the creature from another world struggling to speak. My tongue felt thick, and my words fell out hollow. Please, just give me another chance, or give anyone another chance. Not him. Trust me. I can't trust you, Adrian. I gave you my heart. So now you don't get to pick. Now you don't get to pick who I fall in love with. Hello, guys. I whirled around, saw Crow, and stepped in front of Michelle, keeping her away from him. Should I go? Crow asked. Yes, actually, we're going to go home. I said, can you pack the bag, Crow? Come on, Chell. I reached out to her. No, I'm sick of everyone using me. She leaped up on her own and looked rabid. Dirt flowed down her red hair. You guys can take the cabin for the last night. I'm done. Crow, we're leaving. She stormed off. Crow tried to follow her. I grabbed a stick from the fire. Its edge burned red hot. What are you? I asked him. Something that has waited, he whispered. What? What's that mean? Something that is patient. What are you talking about? Something that can wait for his pleasure until the very end. Where's Jace? Where's the real Byron? Where Michelle will be. I charged, stick first. He caught my wrist. The red, glowing stick rested inches away from his heart. With my left hand, I pushed his face inside. I hurt myself, not him. His smile hung in a strange O shape. With both my legs, I swung my body to hit his legs and bring him down. He was as resilient as stone. My kick to his groin did nothing. Exhausted, defeated, I let go to regroup. Still, I had to save Michelle. I want to thank you, Adrian, he said. I charged again, expecting nothing better, but knowing I had to try. It worked. I stabbed into his chest. He fell to the floor, and I got to work, aiming for any soft part of his body to cut into. Thank you, Adrian, he said. To be like you, to finish my transformation. I thought I would have to put on such a performance. But no, all I had to do was not be you, and she fell into my arms. Thank you for your wickedness. Michelle screamed. I looked up and saw her running across the cabin to save her man. Adrian still smiled, knowing he played his role perfectly. The perfect victim. Michelle knocked me over. I'm told my head bounced against the earth, dragging me from consciousness. I, of course, was uninvited to the wedding. Everyone who was there was. They held a small wedding at the courthouse. She wore white and put her hair in a bun and wore her glasses as opposed to her contacts that day. She always said she would do that because it would be authentic. That's the last I saw of her. Not even a Facebook post or Snapchat story. Until I got a message from her about 3 months after the day she left cabin. I'll show you. Joe. Hey man, how's it going? Long time no see. Me. It's so good to hear from you. I was worried, to be honest. I just want to apologize. How are things going with Crow? Joe. Hi. The past. Is the past really good? He wrote a book. In fact, I'm messaging you because I'd really appreciate it if you supported us and read it and tried it out. Me. Well, that's awesome. What's it called? Joe. They've always been with us. Me. That's odd. Was it inspired by the one you showed me? Joe. Huh. Me. Why so many emojis? It's not like you. Joe. Yes, it is. I guess you didn't notice before. But to answer your question, nope, only one such book in existence. Me. Hey. Joe, why'd we break up? Joe. Whoa. Weird question to ask someone, but mutual differences. I didn't text her back. Story 10. I finally saw the demon that has always taken care of me. The loneliness was a part of me. Even when I was surrounded by people who wanted to know me or be close to me, I knew how to smile and be nice. But I didn't know how to follow conversations or show real interest in things I didn't care about. Worldliness. I was exactly at that point where people would think I was cool without actually knowing me, where I looked pleasant without truly engaging. I had gone a couple times to the movies or a bar because I knew I'd sometimes have to give in, just enough to blend in and be left alone when I wanted. Yet I still preferred going alone to art galleries, movie fests, symphonic concerts, to doodle while sitting in a tiny cafe, or simply to walk. It had been a long time since I had given up the idea of exchanging hearts and souls. Because something I learned is that in this overly human world, no one listens. Absolutely no one. They only hear what they want to hear. If you're into small talk, they think you want to sleep with them. If you're into parties and drinking, that you might be a good self-destructive buddy. If you keep to yourself, you're either arrogant or insecure. If you laugh a lot, you're silly. If you're too deep, you're too intense. You don't belong wherever the rest are. If you're too serious, they might actually learn something from you. But that doesn't mean they'll enjoy your company. And so on. There's always a but. Yet if you don't try to fit in even a little, the feeling that you might lean on someone also vanishes. That, too, might be an illusion, but we all like to think that somebody will go to our funeral. If I couldn't sort out my life, I'd like to think at least a handful of people cared enough to say goodbye. But in those days, I felt that if a lightning bolt struck me, my only companions at my funeral would be the ghosts that already lurked in the parlor. And nothing could assure me that those ghosts would be good company for all eternity. What if they were as dull as humans? I constantly felt that a part of me was missing, that I couldn't find what I was looking for without even knowing what it was. The grief for something I had never lost had already become a part of me, making me wander to the world, worn out by how aloof people could be. What if dullness was a norm and I was a lost one, in a world I could not understand at all? What if I was supposed to be born in another kind of realm and was just a victim of some cosmic mistake? Or what if I was simply and plainly crazy? I just wanted to know, to find someone who could understand the deepest layers of feeling and perception the way I did. Someone to whom I could speak of the connections built between our atoms millions of years ago, and how we're all part of the same living system, meaning there's much more to existence than working and paying bills. I didn't care about a football team or the new song everyone danced to. I didn't care whether someone's background was physics or literature, or if they were raw vegans or had a taste for human blood. I didn't care about a past full of bliss, or if someone had just gotten out of jail. All I yearned for was a connection that transcended time and space. After all, time was possibly just a human construct. I constantly pictured myself as a spectator locked in a tower, watching everything that happened around me from afar. The few times I tried to jump into the action, deciding to go out, instead of blending into the crowds and following their rhythm, I'd fall into the lake surrounding the tower, infested by flesh-eating crocodiles and other mortal, soulless creatures. Each time I fell, I became more reluctant to blend in, and despite trying to avoid it, sometimes the tower turned to fog or melted little by little, forcing me to swim in those icy waters with all kinds of monsters. And if I survived, I would wander among soul and heart-eating people who might look completely innocent to each other, but who longed to devour agonizing and lost souls, like mine, starved for hearts in pain and torment, and for those very few who dare to be themselves. Each time I returned to seek refuge in the tower, I tried to make it higher and stronger, licking my wounds like an abandoned dog, only praying that this time it wouldn't dissolve or turn to dust. The tower grew stronger, taller, colder, and I became a better spectator of the show. Each time it shook, I built more bricks around it, releasing more deadly creatures into the water to remind myself I shouldn't even try, that I should cling to its beams with all my remaining strength. But the mind is weak and the heart is a bad influence, quite stubborn at times. Someone down there had a key in his hand, and I had to see where that key would take me. So, like an idiot, I went down again. We walked by cliffs, crossed hanging bridges, sailed through dangerous waters, avoided erupting volcanoes, and jumped over quicksands. We laughed about dullness, emptiness, and routine. We saw powerless and broken souls, but I clung to his warm and protective gaze. He stretched out his hand to take mine, and although I was hesitant, I finally reached out. His touch was warm and gentle. I felt a kind of serenity flow through my veins, and a soft, smooth tranquility settle in my heart. He led me through murk and shadows, but I wasn't afraid. Through fog and darkness, between tall, menacing trees and shape-shifting shadows with eerie sounds coming from every direction, until we passed through a thick mist and reached, at the end of the path, an entrance to a spiral staircase going down. The gentle warmth of his hand, and a smile that could wake the dead, persuaded me to continue. As we advanced, the stairs led us to a very old and secret passage with a door at the end. It seemed frozen, but he gave me a tender smile to remind me that even if time no longer existed, he and I were indeed there. The key was shiny as the moon and beautiful as the stars, almost as beautiful as the door that awaited us. I couldn't even begin to imagine what I would find behind it. I pictured flowing colors, a warm rain of sparkles, and the constant feeling of oppression leaving my chest. He placed the key in my hand and held it with his own. I was shaking, or so I thought. The ground around us, the passage, the cave, the door, everything was trembling. Everything began to blur while Draywan searched for my eyes, confused. A chill ran down my spine to the tip of every hair, and I felt needles piercing me from the inside out through my ears, tongue, and eyes. I heard Very's voice as I screamed in pain, trying to hold onto Druin's hand. But it was useless. His hand was turning to smoke, just like everything else. I opened my eyes in anguish and terror to find myself between soft covers and pillows that somehow felt colder than the lake surrounding the tower, and just as melancholic. Very's voice still echoed as it had in the dream. I felt a knot in my throat that still held the soreness of the needles, and with tears streaming down my face, I sat up in desperate despair. All I could think about was Draywan, and how he was gone. Very was in front of me, standing, facing the bed, with his ice-cold gray eyes and long, shiny hair, tall and statuesque. He seemed upset, as if he had just cried and was trying to hide it. He reminded me of The Fallen Angel by Alexander Cabanel. It was the first time he was truly in front of me, not on the other side of the mirror, not as a shadow, not as a note I'd randomly find, not a soft whisper in my ear, not a misty shape. He was there, cold, upset, bitter. I wasn't afraid of him, but I was terrified of what he could have done. If a demon could pant, he surely looked like that, without daring to speak. I asked everything I wanted to know with my eyes. He knew. I couldn't allow him to hurt you. His voice resonated like in my dream, pressing on my chest, making me feel uneasy and frustrated. I could hear a million echoes of the same sentence, each one stabbing deeper than the last. He began to fade, dissolving like in a movie. What about Draywan? I shouted while I could still see Very's eyes. I was terrified of his voice's effect, but I had to know. You don't have to worry about him anymore, he replied as his eyes vanished into thin air. He didn't want to hurt me. That's a risk I'm not willing to take. And with that, there was no trace of him, not in the room, nor anywhere else. I gasped, overwhelmed, fighting the numbness in my palms and lips. I jumped to grab my phone, desperate, hoping all of this was just a bad dream. But nothing. No trace of Draywan. No messages, no calls, no pictures, no name to find online, as if he had never existed, or as if he had never existed in my life. I pictured him holding someone else's hand with the key, opening that door, in another universe where I never existed. I even hit my head, cursing in denial, but it all ended in bitter resignation after a while. I slowly sank between the covers, holding my pillow with desolation and helplessness, exhausted and broken, weeping the most bitter tears that had ever left my eyes, feeling as if they would never stop.